Good evening, Wakefield, and welcome to the Town Council meeting of Monday, February 26th, 2024. I call this meeting to order at 7 p.m. I would like to ask everyone to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item number 3 is attendance. All of my colleagues are here today. 6 of us in person. Councillor Smith-Galvin is joining us via Zoom. And Councillor, you can hear us okay? If you want to give me a thumbs up.
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Item number 4 is public engagement. So we have a number of individuals who've signed up for public engagement. We'd like to ask you, if you are here in person, to come up to the table and speak into the microphone. We'll ask you to please state your name and address and limit your comments to 3 minutes. And I'd like to start by asking Patrick Kroyak to speak. Great. Welcome, and go ahead whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Is this all right? Hi there. My name is Patrick Kroyak, live at 105 Hopkins Street, 311. And I'm here today to speak in favor of the Bike and Ped plan. Since my wife and I moved here several years ago, we've become regulars at the farmer's market, met neighbors at the community garden, and started meeting with friends at the hobby bunker downtown for game nights. Those friends now show up early every game night so they can walk and shop downtown. I asked them what they liked about downtown, and they said that they love that they can walk and go between dining, retail, and the lake, all without needing a car. They also said that Albion Street is the nicest part of downtown, and they really hope that the rest of downtown gets the same makeover soon. Unfortunately, getting around town isn't always easy. My wife rarely goes to the lake on her runs because there are stretches of roads without sidewalks. We both had near misses countless times on the crosswalks in town, and I was hit while biking home in a painted lane on a share road on my way home from work in Reading. I want to be able to live a life like my grandparents had. They knew the grocer, the barber, and their favorite restaurants had mugs special for them. I know for some people here, Wakefield already provides this sense of community and support. But for others, getting around town is dangerous and frightening. I'm asking everyone to please listen to your neighbors asking for your help, not just the people on the council. We don't want to take away anyone's cars. We just want people to have the option to choose to bike or walk or drive somewhere without worrying if their wives, husbands, kids, or grandparents won't come home. The Bike and Ped plan will make Wakefield safer for drivers, walkers, families, and everyone who passes through this amazing town we now call home. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, we did have a piece of written comment from someone who I believe is not here, so I will read this just so we have it for the record. It's from Madeline Fournier of 8 Wiley Place. Madeline writes, I've been walking to school since I started kindergarten and walk around town for errands or meeting up with my friends. I recently got my driver's license and am able to see that safety issues on our streets from a new perspective. Not only can it be dangerous to walk because of cars speeding and not yielding to pedestrians, but it can also be dangerous as a driver when pedestrian crossings aren't clearly marked. I would like to see the bike and pedestrian paths to Wakefield roads can be safer for pedestrians, bicycles, and drivers. Next up, we have John Chrisley, who's here in studio.
Going in alphabetical order.
No. No, just the order we received comment and sign-ups.
Good evening. My name is John Chrisley. I live at 19 Humphrey Street in the Greenwood District, and I'm one of the co-founders of the Safe Streets Working Group here in town. I want to thank the council, and particularly Bill Renault and Aaron Kokinda for all their hard work in developing the bicycle and pedestrian master plan. I want to focus my comments on what I consider a livable community. And I consider this plan much more than simply to benefit pedestrians and bikers, even though that is the primary sort of vulnerable populations that are focused on. It's really a community-wide public safety plan that's going to make Wakefield a lot more enjoyable, a lot more add vitality to the downtown business district, and at the same time connect great recreational areas. The council has had, debate on the design of the North Ave project, for example, and the other Lakeside Road, Main Street on the other side of the lake. All of these sidewalk widenings, the bike lane improvements, make it possible to get around town on an alternate, something other than your car. And it's also going to play a role, I think, in the development of reducing traffic congestion all over town to everyone's benefit. Cars, car drivers, people on bikes, and the pedestrian groups. I want to talk a little bit about what it means to be a vulnerable population. One of the things, my wife and I have a agreement that every time I go out on my bike, she says 2 words to me before I leave the house, and it's "be safe." So whether I'm going around my ride around Lake Quantapowhat in the morning, or whether I'm going out for a ride with my cycling club, those are the last 2 words we have an agreement that she says to me on the way out the door. So the plan talks about vulnerable populations, and it's really children, the elderly, and people on bikes, I think, are 3 of the main ones identified in this plan. So what does being vulnerable mean? It really means that you're reluctant or afraid to walk or ride your bike in Wakefield or many other communities like Wakefield. So I think that's one of the key things that this plan has done. It's really brought this into a comprehensive report that addresses these vulnerability issues. The last couple comments I want to make are about what the overview of the plan, I think, really synthesizes. It's a couple of the goals in the plan are to encourage a culture where residents and visitors choose to walk, bicycle, roll, or drive around town. And it emphasizes that users should be able to access all of these modes of travel safely and conveniently. Safely means, a lack of fear going out on the roads, as you heard me address, but it also makes it convenient, because we all know we're creatures of convenience. You want to be able to conveniently walk or ride around Wakefield. One of the second goals in the plan, I think, is really important, is establishing a bicycle and pedestrian network that connects all these points in town. So I think that's another really strong point of this plan. The last thing I want to say is Wakefield is a great community. We actually have the benefit of having some existing wide rights of way, like North Ave, like the Main Street side on the lake, and it makes it possible to make these design changes. And I think these design changes, if they are implemented, are going to be just a huge benefit to the whole community.
Thank you. Next up, we have Jessica Butler, if you wouldn't mind coming up.
Hello. Hi, my name's Jessica Butler. I live at 852 Main Street. My husband and I moved to Wakefield 7 years ago, and I'm here to support the bike and pedestrian plan. There's a finite right-of-way along the streets in Wakefield. The National Association of City Transportation Officials states that shifting trips to more efficient travel modes is essential to upgrading the performance of limited street space. This same group attributes different capacities to different modes of transportation, with private motor vehicles allowing for 600 to 1,600 people per hour, mixed traffic with frequent buses, 1,000 to 2,800 people per hour, a two-way protected bikeway, 7,500 people per hour, and a sidewalk, 9,000 people per hour. Adopting the bicycle and pedestrian master plan would be the best thing that the town could do to increase the capacity of our streets within the existing right-of-way. Creating safe alternatives to driving decreases congestion and aligns with the Vision 2030 statement. The goal is not to take anyone's ability to drive or park away or eliminating the amount that they can drive. The goal is to enable our community to have a network of alternatives so that every time you walk out of your front door, there is not only one viable option to get into your car and drive to your destination. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Kathleen Toohey. I apologize if I mispronounce anyone's name. Please
No, that
correct
was
me.
Perfect. My name's Kathleen Toohey. I live at 8 Wiley Place. I'm a member of Safe Streets Wakefield and a liaison with the Safe Routes to School program. As a parent, I have spoken to many other parents in town who are afraid to let their kids walk, roll, or bike to school. I've heard over and over that our streets aren't safe for them because of missing or the poor condition of sidewalks and crosswalks, as well as speeding cars with little or no regard for others. After evaluating the areas around most of Wakefield's public schools, the Safe Routes to School program has made recommendations that would improve the safety of our students and increase accessibility to our schools. Those recommendations, combined with steps outlined in the bike and pedestrian plan, would greatly improve safety for our kids. Changes like standardizing our crosswalk designs, proper signage at crosswalks, including rapid flashing beacons, improving the condition of sidewalks, and implementing traffic calming measures would improve safety for all residents. Per the U.S. Department of Transportation, rapid flashing beacons can reduce pedestrian crashes up to 47% and increase motorist yielding rates up to 98%. Our engineering department and DPW have made some improvements around our schools, including new school zone signs, but we need more proactive changes to further protect some of our most vulnerable residents. This would also be a big step towards a continuous network of sidewalks for all Wakefield residents. Safe Routes to School hosts Walk to School days in an effort to decrease traffic and improve the wellness of our youth. Our schools are reporting increasing numbers of kids walking, biking, and rolling these days each year. Improved walking, biking, and rolling conditions would encourage getting to school without the need for a car on a more regular basis. As most Wakefield residents know, some of our worst traffic in town is around our schools during arrival and dismissal each day. The majority of Wakefield schools are located on our busiest roads, 2 of which have already seen very serious, even fatal pedestrian accidents. The most recent, on North Ave in November of 2022, has been left off of the crash map on page 13 of the plan. No Wakefield resident, young or old, should risk their life getting to school, running an errand, or getting out to exercise. Knowing you all, as our town councilors, have the power to make the changes we need to prevent this from happening again, leads me to implore you to pass the Wakefield Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan. In the words of urban designer and director of community action at Strong Towns, Mr. Edward Erfurt, quote, "No one should be the second person to die on a dangerous street." Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Maureen Nelting.
Good evening. My name is Maureen Nelting. I live at 100 Nahant Street. I would like to thank the Town Council, the Town Engineer Bill Renault, Community Economic Development Director Eric Kokinda, along with the MAPC, who have spent quite a lot of time over the past few years working on the bicycle and pedestrian plan. Without their dedication to making biking, walking, and rolling something that can happen safely in Wakefield, we would not be here tonight. There is still quite a lot to do before all residents can safely walk, bike, and/or roll. As the saying goes, Rome wasn't built in a day, and improvements to walk, bike, and roll safely will, of course, take time. It is my opinion that the safety of those who walk, bike, and/or roll in Wakefield should be paramount. The town will need to make design improvements to some sidewalks so students walking to school are safer and those walking for exercise or to go to a local shop, a restaurant, library, etc. can get there safely. The plan calls for a continuous network of sidewalks and main roads that are safe for pedestrians, bicyclists, and those who roll. Based on what I read in the Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan, I believe this will happen over time. Thank you for your attention, and I encourage the town councilors to vote in the affirmative to approve the town's bicycle and pedestrian plan when it comes up for a vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And then finally, we have Bill Spalding and Juliana Spalding.
I'm Juliana Spalding. I live at 42 Gould Street. I am a senior at the high school. I'm an elected member of Wakefield Youth Council, and I'm also a liaison to the the Safe Streets Working Group. My time with Safe Streets has shown me how I can benefit and how my life can improve from the bike ped guidelines. High school has been the first time I've experienced needing a car to get to school. In elementary and middle school, I've biked with my dad or walked to school with a big group of friends. I wish I could bike to the high school. It'd be a much better alternative, but it's barely safe to drive to the high school, let alone bike. This summer, the Wakefield Youth Council and Safe Streets Working Group held a free bike valet, scooter valet, and stroller valet at the farmers market, and it was a big hit. We received a lot of positive reinforcement and encouragement, and that gives me a lot of hope. Please consider voting for the bike ped plan.
Thanks. I'm a proud dad, of course. But it's true. My name is Bill Spalding. I live at 42 Gould Street, and you've seen me up here before. Been elected to the planning board, and I want to talk a little bit about that. But I'm not speaking for the board. I'm also part of the Safe Streets Wakefield group. And as you both know, last time I spoke here, it was a rainy, cold night, had a flat tire, got here just in time to speak. And this has started a long time ago, right? I mean, I ran for planning board because I wanted our kids to have safer routes to school. And that's something that Kathy spoke about. I do commute into Boston each day to work and by bike. And I think that's not for everybody. And we spoke about this before. And Ed, I know, Councilor Dabrowski, you're an avid triathlon triathlete. Thank you. We just came in on a red eye this morning from the Rockies on vacation, so I apologize. Thank you. You did a great job. This started running for the planning board and being elected was really special for me to become part of this town. More than a scout leader and a little league coach and lacrosse coach, but it was getting involved in a different way. And as an architect, this was important for me. And then something happened called Envision Wakefield, and I met Councilor Chines and Councilor Dombrowski, and you both energized me to run for a second term for the planning board because I believed that when you got up there and spoke about how important it was for people to walk and bike around town safely and make the difference of what Albion Street is, and that was our little trial, but everything else that goes with it. And I understand, the battle of parking and traffic, and as Juliana said and a few other people, it's about safety for cars too. I love that letter that came in. It's like, wow, driving for the first time. We forget that. It's scary when you drive for the first time, right? Yeah, so thinking about what happened this summer. This summer was the first time we did the bike valet, and I was glad to be able to support it. Go down, Catherine Dingra helped us. We went down with the signs, we biked down. So besides our bikes, there's two, we would have a little scooter, a couple of strollers would stop by, and the kids would walk around. But little by little, it started to build. There was a couple times we had 6 or 8 bikes there, and it was wonderful. It rained, it was hot in the sun. We're learning, but we want to keep this going. This is the momentum that Envision Wakefield energized me with. So I hope that as all of you, as counselors for this town, have a chance to vote, I hope you vote in favor of this because it is a guideline that will help us build the infrastructure to make it safer to walk and roll around town. Thanks.
Thank you, and thank you both for your service. And Juliana, I know you're a senior this year, so you'll be finishing your time on the youth council, but it's been great to have your voice there and everything that you've done. So we appreciate everything you've contributed to the town. Sherry, do we have anyone online?
Yes, we do. We have someone by the name of Julie. She's coming over now.
Good evening, Julie Scott, 4 Central Street, Wakefield. Thanks so much for meeting tonight and talking about the bike plan again. Every time I look at it, it's better and better and better. I'll send a couple of emails because I just, an email or two, I just had a chance to read it because it was posted at 5:30, so I'll send you some of that stuff. But if you guys could also look to include the pictures of the bike lanes that are already promoted to be downtown. The previous speaker mentioned Envision Wakefield. There are some really dynamic images within the Envision Wakefield postings that are found online that would really enhance the presentation of the bike and ped plan. I'm specifically mentioning the North Avenue area, the two sections of Main Street, Middle Main and South Main, and even including Albion Street, even though most of that work is done, would really enhance the presentation. I also want to talk just very quickly about an email that I sent to the town councilors about my concern about the wording of the town council agenda a couple weeks ago. It had item 8 for the annual town meeting. It mentioned item A, citizens petition for zoning amendment referral to planning board, which you guys referred to the planning board. So that was one item. And then you had B, citizens petition for zoning amendment referral to planning board. That's a second item that you referred to the planning board. Didn't know what the wording meant because I felt that and I still feel they lacked detail. But when I looked at the planning board's agenda and the planning board was meeting the following night, it didn't match up with those two referred items that you referred. It only had one of the referred items, and that was item 3 listed on their agenda as the self-storage facility zoning bylaw, which, by the way, I'd like to compliment. I see Brian McGrail there. He did a really good job reading it. It's very clear, has a lot of clarity. The map and everything is very clear and easy to understand. The marijuana overlay district is not mentioned on, especially the word marijuana, on either agenda. I found that for the past 2 weeks, it was hard to read that agenda item. It's much clearer now that the town posted it, but I'm concerned that it was not on the planning board's agenda and that the planning board acted on an item when they voted to, when they offered to set a public hearing on it. They worked on an agenda item that was not publicly posted on their own agenda. So I look forward to having the council maybe give that a quick talk about at the end of the meeting. But again, the bike plan's looking good. Thanks so much for all your work. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Sherry, anyone else online?
Oh, yep, somebody else just put their hand up. Rob. Nope, he just put it down. We're good.
Okay. And have we
No,
have we got everyone
Jonathan.
in studio? Oh,
Well, it was. Rob, do you want to speak or no? Okay, Jonathan, no, hold on. So sorry. Rob, what if she's coming over now, Jonathan?
okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Yes.
If you wouldn't mind giving us your
hi.
name and address and
Yeah,
keeping your comments to 3 minutes.
great, thank you. Hi, it's Rob Weddick, 29 Walden Road, Wakefield, Massachusetts. And I appreciate the revisions to the bike plan. I think it's great that things are happening. I do have a couple comments that I would like to just, if there will be addressed. But one thing I would say is that I'm happy that there is currently the bike plan is showing figure 32 that Main Street has, it has parking as well as biking. And I noticed that there is a tree in the middle of between the biking lane and the parking lane. I just don't think there's enough room for that. And maybe there is, maybe there isn't. But if there isn't enough room for it, I would like to see the parking and the biking be on the same flat plane, so that if there are no cars, which is a good majority of the time, then then there's a much larger width for biking. So I'm not sure if that can be done, but that's my comment I'd like to say. Also, I'm quite concerned that it seems like there's not a whole lot of room for all of the for this on Main Street, and hopefully there is. But if there isn't, I think we can take away that that tree in the middle of the road. One other thing I'd like to say is that I think there are no pictures of the guardrails shown on any of those drawings. So I would like to get that clarification. The next one is there's been a lot of talk about flex poles on North Avenue, especially near Vetsfield and Hall Park, where there's street parking is used during busy times of the area. So I hope that is being addressed, and I feel that flex poles on North Avenue are unsightly, and I would like to see if there's a way to keep them off. So my comments, but in general, I'm happy with the change that I saw that allowed parking on Main Street. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. All right. Anyone else, Sherry?
No, Jonathan, you're good.
Great. And have we gotten everyone in studio who had planned to speak? Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. Moving on to item number 5, local initiative program. I know we have some guests speaking on this. Mr. Mayo, is there anything you want to say just to introduce this or set it up?
No, not really. I want to turn it over to Brian, but this is we've often come at the end of the line when all plans have been done and someone is looking to put a development somewhere. I think what Attorney McGrail and his clients would like to do is to talk about kind of a partnership. It's kind of a friendly 40B program where we can actually get involved perhaps in some of the design and some of the before it just comes down from, we get a letter from the state saying, here we are, you guys have to act on this. So Trent McGrail came in and talked to me and brought in his clients and wanted to come in and at least present this to the town council and take it from there. So thank you.
Great.
Thank you for the courtesy.
Well, thank you, Mr. McGrail. If you wouldn't mind going ahead, introducing yourself and your clients, and
Thank you so much.
moving ahead with your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councilors, for the record, Attorney Brian McGrail with offices at 607 North Avenue in Wakefield. With me tonight is Alex Diapetro. He is a representative of the ownership group of the properties at 484 and 504 Salem Street in Wakefield. And Eric Lane is here from Hayes Engineering in case any questions come up that he might be able to answer. We're here to talk about 484 and 504 Salem Street in Wakefield. And as Steve had alluded to, and as you'll see in the PowerPoint presentation, I'm referring to this as a possible friendly Mass General Laws Chapter 40B multifamily development at these properties. The possibility is going to come down to your council, whether you think it's something that should potentially move forward or not. As you'll see, this isn't the typical 40B presentation that you have had in the past. We believe that these properties present a unique opportunity for a friendly 40B that could be beneficial to the owners of the property and, in fact, beneficial to the town of Wakefield. The benefit to the owner would be obviously an increase in the usefulness of the property, an increase in value, and profitability for the properties. The benefit for the town would be to provide additional affordable housing, increasing the town's subsidized housing inventory, the SHI, is mandated by the state. And we believe it would be in a location that would have minimal or no impacts to a neighborhood where there's already infrastructure, and particularly traffic infrastructure, to support the development, as you will see. Our goal would be to work with your council to explore the possibilities, to determine if it's something that we should move forward with together to make it a reality. In my presentation, I'll elaborate a little bit on what I mean by the term friendly 40B. But in short, it's really the property owner and the town working together with a common goal to provide much needed affordable housing with minimal impact to the town. And in a friendly 40B, your town council remains in control of the process throughout rather than the Commonwealth of Massachusetts or the state. This gives you an idea of the properties that we're talking about at 484 and 504 Salem Street. They're situated behind the Dunkin' Donuts on Salem Street. Very large parcels. There's a combination of 4 of them. They're shown as lots 16, 16D, 16G, and 16FA on Wakefield Assessors Map 39A. Combined, they contain 415,000 square feet or 9.5 acres of land. So it's a pretty big site. Adjacent to it, as you see, as you're looking at the screen to the left, is another big parcel of land that is owned by National Grid. So that property would never be developed. Currently, the properties at 484 and 504 contain a three-family dwelling and a two-family dwelling for a total of 5 units. Those buildings will be removed as part of this project. It's important to note that none of the 5 units in these combined buildings count towards Wakefield subsidized housing inventory. So none of these units are currently affordable units. They're market rate units. The Dunkin' Donuts at 518 Salem Street, which is in front of these properties, is owned by a related entity. So the folks that own 484 and 504 Salem Street, also a related entity owns 518 Salem Street, so they're in control of that site, and that makes it capable of providing legal access to the properties, with the added benefit of an existing traffic light on Salem Street, which serves the Dunkin' Donuts, which would also serve these properties. So, as I mentioned at the beginning, there is infrastructure in place to support a development of this nature. And this is just kind of a picture. You can see in the background, that's the three-family dwelling. It's the white structure in the back, and the traffic light, which comes out to Salem Street and leads down Pleasure Island Road. We've highlighted the properties in red on this slide. The properties at 484 and 504 Salem are zoned mainly single residence zoning district with a small portion in the business district. Obviously, the Dunkin' Donuts up front is entirely in the business district. So I mentioned the possible project that we want to discuss. My clients are interested in working cooperatively with the town council for both parties to determine if it could be beneficial to the clients and if it could be beneficial to the town for the properties to be developed with a modest 24-unit multifamily rental building pursuant to Mass General Laws Chapter 40B through the local initiative program, which is a little bit different than the conventional 40B, and that's where the term friendly 40B comes from. 6 of these units would be affordable dwelling units. Some would be 3-bedroom units as required by Mass General Laws. Also, since it would be a rental building, all 24 of the units would count toward Wakefield's subsidized housing inventory, which is very important, as you know, for the state to measure our stock and our goal to get 10% under Mass General Laws Chapter 40B. This would also provide an additional tool if you decide to pursue a housing production plan. It would be a feather in your cap and added units that would support a housing production plan, which would give you more protection against conventional 40Bs, which you might not like or would, for lack of a better way of saying it, might be forced upon you. So as I've mentioned, I was going to get into what does a friendly Mass General Laws Chapter 40B multifamily development mean and what does working cooperatively mean, as I've said at the beginning. So the local initiative program, which is sponsored by the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, EOHLC, is known more informally, commonly throughout the Commonwealth, as a friendly 40B process. It starts with submitting the plan to the town council as the first step with a friendly 40B. And this highlights a main difference between a friendly 40B development and a conventional 40B development that you are used to seeing. For example, the 2 projects that are currently before the Board of Appeals on Nahan Street are conventional 40Bs. They would not be termed to be a friendly 40B. A conventional 40B development goes to the subsidized agency first, Mass Housing or Mass Housing Partnership, for a letter of eligibility. As part of that process, the developer comes to your council for comments, which you provide, and historically, as you know, notwithstanding comments or objections that you make, the subsidizing entity usually, or agency usually issues a letter of eligibility, allowing the developer to proceed at the Board of Appeals for the project, and your involvement at that point is done. It moves on to the Zoning Board of Appeals, and your council has very little say on what happens from the project with the project at that point. A friendly 40B development is significantly different in that it starts at the town council and involves the town council and developer working together without Mass Housing and without Massachusetts Housing Partnership being involved in the process at all. The town council and the owner or developer can work cooperatively to develop plans and conditions together that are satisfactory to both that would eventually be sent to the Board of Appeals. It's important to know that the Board of Appeals is not cut out of this process. Eventually, it still has to have a hearing and approval by the Board of Appeals once you're done with it. If after working together, the town council or the developer determine they do not like the direction of the project or determine it is not in their best interest to proceed, there's no obligation of either party to move forward. So at any time, you can say, you know what, this just isn't going to work. We've tried. Or my client could say the same thing. Perhaps during our discussions, you ask for certain conditions that we just can't do. But no harm, no foul. We shake hands and walk away and move on. If, however, after working together, the town council and developer or owner determine that they each like the project and want to move forward, they both execute a local initiative program application with EOHLC for their approval. And it's a detailed application that Erica Kinder would have to participate in and help fill out. We would hire an affordable housing consultant at our expense to work with us to do that. And it gets submitted to EOHLC. Usually they would approve it historically because they like friendly 40Bs. It's promoting affordable housing, and they obviously like to see the community and owners of property working together in that common goal. If they do approve it, then the developer will be able to proceed before the Board of Appeals for the project. I also want to state that conservation is not cut out of this process. There's wetlands involved in this site, so there would have to be separate applications to the Conservation Commission, and they would have their say on the project too, from a conservation standpoint. With a friendly 40B development, the town council will be the subsidizing agency. So in essence, you step in place of Mass Housing or Mass Housing Partnership, those entities that usually issue the eligibility letters that you're asked to comment on. Now you're stepping in their place, and you're making a decision on the appropriateness of the site and the development. And once you sign the application, that is the subsidy that qualifies this for a Mass General Laws Chapter 40B project. And for your signature on the application with EOLHC, that's the subsidizing event. Unlike a conventional 40B development, a friendly 40B development allows municipalities to remain in control of all aspects of the project, including design and construction. Your council will be intricately involved in all aspects of the evaluation of the site and the design of the project. I anticipate we will be before you on a number of occasions in that regard, presenting plans, working through them, listening to you to requested changes, and working through that progress with that common goal that I've mentioned. I said that I believe that this site has little impact, and you saw an earlier slide which shows it behind the Dunkin' Donuts. As I've mentioned, it's 415,000 square feet, 9.5 acres. What we're proposing is a modest project. It's 24 units. It's on a footprint of just under 9,000 square feet. It would be 4 stories. It would have parking underneath, 3 stories above. We believe that this project will virtually not be seen from anywhere with the buffers that are around it, the significant land surrounding it. We believe we can design this with significant excess parking that will be well beyond the requirements of our zoning bylaw for a project of this nature. The ownership group wants to retain ownership of this building. They have a vested interest in doing so, being the owners of the Dunkin' Donuts up front. They actually anticipate that some of their employees might want to reside here. So it could provide a nice opportunity for them. The next slide kind of highlights this huge buffer that's around this. As you look to the right of the screen, you'll see parking spaces. That's where the building would be located approximately. And that might change through discussions with your town council. You might say, you know, move it over here or work together to relocate it on the property. But that's something that's what we anticipate. There's some challenges to this site because of conservation issues. There's also some paper streets on the site. Paper streets are streets that show on plans but are not constructed on the ground. So people might have rights in those streets that we have to respect. Usually they would never be used. It's more of a legal theory that you have to respect them, because if you don't and you build on them, you create a marketability problem with the property. When title attorneys look at it, they don't like you building on paper streets. So we've designed this to avoid that. There's a couple of paper streets back there. You can kind of see how our entrance to this development will go through the Dunkin' Donuts parking lot and out the light onto Salem Street. So it'll be a controlled event for cars that are entering on and off of our site through the Dunkin' Donuts site. So now I say next steps, if any. And what I mean by when I say if any on the next steps is after we've heard, after what you've heard, if you don't think it's worth exploring this any further, then there are no next steps. And we will respectfully go away. We'll thank you for your time, and we'll move on. And so that, that's issue one. If you are interested in looking at this further and getting a good grasp on it, then I would suggest that we would explore the possibilities together, and the next initial steps might involve the following, and I stress these would all be at the expense and cost of my client, not the town. The first event might be a traffic study to be presented and commented on by the Wakefield Traffic Advisory Committee, the police department, the fire department, and the results of that for your review and analysis, to look at the study yourselves and to listen to your experts, TAC and your public safety officers, on their thoughts on if this is an area that this fits and works after they see the traffic report. The second would be a preliminary architectural design and context study to show any visual impacts from this project for your review and analysis. We don't think there will be any, but our engineering group would do a study. They would kind of look at the properties in the area. They would put this on a map, and we would be able to kind of get a look at, hey, what are you going to see from Salem Street? What are you going to see from here? So we could do that as a preliminary step or an initial step. The third would be a meeting with the Department of Public Works and Engineering on utilities and drainage to provide some initial information for your review and analysis, for them to determine, hey, can this site support it utility-wise and drainage-wise initially. And also a meeting with Erin Kinder to review the LIP process, the Local Initiative Program process. So she can report to you is how that process will work in an effort to get you comfortable with that process. Perhaps you could designate or would consider designating a council member that would work with us and be directly involved on all of those items, to perhaps attend the TAC meeting, to participate in some of the conversations with DPW and engineering. That would be a thought. I've seen that done in other towns. If after those initial steps that I've talked about, my client and you agree it makes sense to continue to move forward, then we would proceed at the added expense of my client to develop more detailed architectural and site civil plans, a formal drainage study that would have to be reviewed by the engineering department, and then subsequently again reviewed by your council to make sure you're comfortable with it and all your questions are answered and you're satisfied with the architectural or changes that you might request or comment on. At the end of this working process, we get to the point that we agree we have a project that benefits the owner of the property, my client, and the town. If we get to that point, then we jointly sign the application with EOHLC, and we move forward. And hopefully it gets approved and we go to the Board of Appeals. But if at the end of that process, either party determines, you know what, this has been a good try, but it's just not going to work, then we don't submit the application. And, your board or council just says, we don't want to participate in this after what we've seen. And my client will reserve the right to do the same because, in all honesty, through that process, you might ask for certain conditions or things that they just can't do or may be unfinancially feasible. But it's a working process to try to get to that point. We believe this could be a great example and a model of how a property owner and a town can work together within Massachusetts General Laws 40B, work within it together in an effort to provide affordable housing in our community in a cooperative, positive manner. So that is our presentation. We're happy to answer any questions that you might have, Mr. Chair.
Great. Well, thank you very much. And I do want to start before we turn it over to the council for questions by saying how much I personally sort of appreciate the approach that you're taking to this. Obviously, we need to talk about and figure out if this is something that, as a council, we're interested in moving forward for. But, I think given probably some of the well-documented frustrations the council's expressed with some other 40B projects in town, to be able to have a conversation and to engage up front, I think is something that I greatly appreciate, and am glad that we're able to have these conversations now within the context of an idea and a collaboration, rather than after the fact. I do, just before I open it up to questions for the council, want to clarify one comment that you made. To the extent that if we did go forward and the town were the quote subsidizing agent, I want to clarify that is just sort of the legal term on the application. That isn't the town is investing in the development of this property.
No, the town is not, no financial resources. There has to be a subsidy with 40B, and the subsidy is your participation in the application process.
Great.
That's it.
Yeah, I just want to make
In essence, your signature, Mr. Chair. On the
exactly.
application.
Yeah. So I just want to make sure that that's clear to us and to the public, that this isn't a sort of public-private partnership in terms of building something. Let me open up to the council for any questions or comments. Councilor McLean.
Thanks for the presentation, Attorney McGrail. You've hit on a lot of the points. You really have. And I like this idea. I like the idea of a friendly 40B in general. What size units might you be looking at, or are you not at that stage yet?
Well, 10% have to be 3-bedroom units, and then a mix of 1 and 2 beyond that. But we haven't gotten to an architectural. We haven't spent the time or money on that at this point.
Okay,
So,
and 6 of the 24 would be moderate income, but we get credit as a rental for all 24 on the SHI.
correct.
On the housing inventory.
Yes,
That's a good thing. Fair amount of green space. I mean, it's a big lot.
it's a big lot. Yeah.
Yeah. How wet is it?
There's a good amount of wetlands. I haven't gone further out back, but that's something that we would make the presentation on.
Right.
But it's a fair amount.
Usually don't see 9.5 acres in Wakefield. It hasn't
I
been
know.
built on.
And
Just
I
kinda-
think a lot of
Yeah.
it's not developable, so I,
Right. What were the barriers? Just the single-family housing, the houses that you had to deal with there, the 2-family and the 3-family?
I'm sorry?
What was the barrier prior to doing it on a friendly 40B? I'm just curious as to why it wasn't developed earlier.
I've had a lot of calls on this property, and what happened is,
We've owned it for
Yeah.
quite some time too.
Okay. Yeah.
and the good thing about this client is the Dunkin' Donuts is a priority. Meaning, that's their, this is, that's their main thing. They're a business person in town. They're
Right.
a community member. So, and that's one of the goals why they wanted to do this in a friendly fashion. They don't want to force anything upon the community. That's not their
Right.
goal.
Normally on a standard 40B, mass housing would obviously be involved, whereas, I guess we would kind of be the initial involved unit. They would normally have a sheet that would talk about financing and how much equity is in the deal, et cetera. So would we be the body that would, be looking at that?
Yes, the LIP application is pretty detailed in that regard. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Would this be an electric building?
It would have to be.
Yeah. So you would also probably have some communication with gas and light?
Yes.
Where would that fit into the timeline you were talking about?
We would do that probably at the beginning. That'd be one of the initial things that we would do.
Right.
Yeah.
And you might look into EV chargers and solar, maybe?
Yeah, I wouldn't, I think EV chargers we have to have EV chargers. I think that needs to be, but, depending on the feasibility of solar.
Right. Right.
I know we've got the new stretch code coming in, so that might be part of this, because we're probably gonna be after that, so there's probably gonna have to be some type of analysis in that regard too.
Yeah.
So,
No, I think it's a great starting point. I think we should, take it to the next step, whatever that next step may be. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Dabrowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for this presentation. It's very thorough. I was looking at the plans. I realized they're early on, but I thought it was quite clever that you actually routed traffic so that it had to go through the drive-through before it made its way to the building. Very clever. But on a more serious note, understanding this 9.5 acres we're talking about, can you give us a sense of, at least preliminarily, what we're looking at in terms of that footprint if you're thinking of 9.5 acres, how much space does the building itself take up?
Eric?
The building is 9,000 square feet, so it's a tiny portion. I think the big barrier is there's some wetlands between Salem Street and the back portion of the property, so to get access to it would be difficult. So I think that's why we're trying to keep it up where it is. There's probably a little more than 9,000 square feet of parking area in there, so you're probably looking at, about 20,000 square feet of disturbance out of the entire parcel.
And 9.5 acres would be how many square feet?
It's
approximately?
415,000 square.
So I think that context or that
Yes.
proportionality is important to think about, certainly. How you've described this friendly 40B and my familiarity with it as well, I think every 40B should be a friendly 40B. I think it's just a better process, and we have heard so many complaints from residents and concerns from neighbors of a lot of these projects because you feel like you're going through the motions, and it's just a rubber stamping. You sense a thoughtful response to mass housing. 99.99% of the time you get back, thank you, but we're going forward as planned. So I really like the idea of being able to maintain this local autonomy or control over a process in a way that we haven't in the past. Certainly, one of the objectives, I believe, of this council and certainly of our community is to get to our 10% for a number of reasons, not the least of which is then we are able to have more control over our destiny going forward. And I think the idea of being able to replace 5 or 6 units now with what would be 25 units online as affordable is quite attractive, in a lot of ways too. And we're only at an exploratory stage here. So if we find either side doesn't like it, for whatever reason, to your point, we can pull out. But with so many other projects, when you think about them, I think all too often now we're seeing projects that are getting crammed into sites that are not befitting of the size. So you might tear down 2 houses and try to put up like 60 units or something crazy like that. And it doesn't fit with the character of the neighborhood or the area. This I see very differently. It's off on its own. It's kind of its own small little enclave. It sounds like it would be surrounded by a good amount of natural preservation, which is important. I know you had mentioned about the excessive parking. That's later in the process, but I think to the extent we don't have to have as much parking, to be excessive, all the better, right? To maintain the natural quality of that. But this really seems like a unique project in that it's really it would be a standalone, and I don't see much of an impact in the same way that a lot of the other projects we're seeing around town are having on butters, on traffic patterns, and so I think it's encouraging, and I'm looking forward to hopefully working through some of these issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Smith-Galvin.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. This is at first glance, a really interesting project that I would be inclined to support the Friendly Bee approach on. And I guess I already had my hand up, but as Councilor Dobrowski said, I think while parking will be something that is considered later, it seems a little excessive to me to go over the parking limits, especially when it could double the footprint within such a large area of wetlands. So I love the idea that maybe it's walking distance for people who work at Dunkin' Donuts and maybe some of the other surrounding businesses. So, my vote is never to go excessive on parking.
Thank you. Councillor Dennehy, you had your hand up.
I think that this is really interesting, and I like the location of it. How close are abutters? Are there abutters? How far away?
It's pretty far, and I believe it's other.
It's another apartment.
Another
building,
apartment
yes.
complex.
Okay, so there's
nothing directly
houses.
abutting. No.
I think the backside of Walton, I believe, would be the closest, and that's quite a distance. I don't have the exact distance off the top of my head, but it's several hundred feet, I would think.
Yeah, majority of the wetlands kind of surrounded in a way that it really separates itself.
So people now who are looking out like their back window,
You might not see anything.
They won't see anything.
Yeah.
Maybe a little more in the winter when the foliage
Yeah.
is down, but yeah, for the most part, you don't see anything.
Okay.
A lot of people pull into Dunkin' and don't even realize there's homes back there, to be
Yeah.
honest with you.
And that would be part of I talked about a context plan.
Yeah.
That's usually, what we do is we do kind of like a massing plan to show just kind of the block of the building and maybe get some different angles from what you're going to see in different perspectives. To give you
I mean, this plan would really be helpful to the town in terms of reaching our 40B with our 10% of having, all 24 units being able to count for that. And you know, I mean, the other thing, I think that this is good because it helps to create more housing that's needed. And you know, if people who are working at the Dunkin' Donuts can live there, that's great. That that's a great help. I like that it's kind of hidden and out of the way. That's it. All sounds great. But I do just want to let people who are, might be watching to know that we need to allow 40Bs, whether they're friendly or not friendly, to happen. It's a mandate from the state. So I really appreciate that you're doing this as a friendly 40B and that you're being really thoughtful about how it fits into the town, because we have had some instances where they have not fit into the town very well. So yeah, I think it's great. So
Thank you, Councilor Vincent.
Thank you, Chair Chines. Thank you very much for the presentation tonight. My first question is actually going to be for Mr. Mayo. When's the last time that Wakefield had a LIP or a friendly?
You know, I was trying to. You asked me that today, and you wanted me to find.
I gave you hours to get the answer.
I can't remember. Was Heron Pond a LIP?
I
Brian?
think it was.
I think it was. That's the last time.
And
I
maybe
can remember.
Fitch Court.
Oh, maybe Fitch Court.
Yeah.
Okay.
I looked today. I was
put that
curious.
one out
I
of
thought
my mind.
I thought that Wakefield Vista might have been, because Wakefield Vista was not, but it was somewhat friendly because it actually went to town meeting because a piece of town land was sold for
okay.
that. Because
But
that
I don't
was
think
up
it started in this.
It didn't. It was not a lip. So I
I'm
can't
gonna,
remember.
I'm going to stick with what I told you today, Heron Pond.
And that's relevant because it doesn't happen with that much frequency. Right. So the fact that you approached us tonight with a friendly 40B really resonates with me. I think that's extremely positive because it does give Wakefield much more control over the situation. You mentioned in your presentation that we get an opportunity on the conventional 40Bs just to do a letter back to Mass Housing or EOHLC, and most often that's not successful. It's been successful only twice in the last 12 years, in Easton in 2012 and Medfield in 2017. So that's indicative of just how infrequently a municipality is able to push back on a conventional 40B. So the fact that we're able to be involved early on a friendly 40B is extremely important. The one question I asked you this earlier today, Mr. McGrail, would your clients pursue a conventional 40B if the friendly 40B did not work out?
I'll let you.
No, that's not something we're interested in. I mean, I think we worked really hard to get our Dunkin' Donuts there, and that's kind of, we're in business with the town, and that's the main focus for us. And if the case is that it's not something you guys feel suits the property or the town, I mean, we'll continue to operate the homes there, or maybe do some upgrades in that regard, and continue to house our employees that need it back there. But this was something when we talked to Mr. McGrail and even the architects and everybody that we thought just made sense. And this was the approach that Mr. McGrail said, and you know, we kind of looked at it and we don't want to ruffle any feathers, and it's not in our wheelhouse to go pursue those types of things. So for us, it made sense, and we figured we present it, and if it continues to go well, great, and if not, you know, that's not the business we're in.
And I knew that was going to be the answer because I talked to Mr. McGrail today. He actually called me. I didn't call him, but I wanted you to be able to say that on the record because that's
Sure.
a real testament to your character. That you want to pursue a relationship with us on a friendly B, and if for whatever reason it doesn't work out, you're not going to pursue another avenue to try to bring a housing development that we may not want. So I wanted you to be able to say that on the record. My last question is actually for Mr. Mullen, because it's going around the room tonight. Are we permitted to have like a town council subcommittee, that the subcommittee could work with Mr. McGrail and the developers going forward?
You may, but bear in mind that that remains a public
meeting, yeah.
body for purposes of the open meeting law.
Because Mr. McGrail had indicated maybe one town council member could work with him, and then I was thinking, does it need to be that way? Does it need to be the entire council, or can we do a subcommittee?
If it's an individual, then it's not a public body.
Correct.
If it's any larger number, then it is.
So what have we done in the past on something like this? Have we had one council member work with a developer? Have we had them come and work with the entire council? Or what is the best approach going forward?
So if I may suggest, you know, if the sense of the council tonight is that we do want to take the next step here, which I'm guessing based on the comments that it is, I would maybe ask if individual counselors are interested in kind of serving as a liaison on this effort, to let me know, and then we can talk
Okay.
about at our next meeting or a subsequent meeting, whether that's kind of a liaison assigned or a subcommittee or whatever makes sense. But I think, if
That's fine.
folks want to let me know offline, we'll tee up that discussion for next time.
All right, thank you. I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
Councilor Buck?
Yeah, just to echo, thank you, Brian, for bringing this. I don't remember a friendly 40B coming in front of us in the last 7 years. So it was before
No,
that.
it's
The
way
Heron
before
Pond
that,
was way
before that.
before us. So I really appreciate this. I love talking about it. Thank you for being such a great business in our town. Go there frequently. I will say that, just recently, I think in the past year, there's been a lot of other developments on Salem Street, and like with the trucks going, it's a concern. And so I would love further conversations, whoever from town council, and as we talk about traffic advisory, we have potentially a bike pedestrian plan, like to think all about that. It is a busy street, and I just want to think about safety and traffic, like we do with everything. And then also, obviously, conversations with the Conservation Commission about the wetlands, because I'm not, I heard you, Brian, that you didn't walk all the way back there, but that just conversations that we will continue to have about what the wetlands are to protect back there. But really exciting. Love to have this dialogue, but like obviously lots more conversations to be had.
Sure, thank you.
Great. Well, again, based on the comments, my sense from my colleagues is that, we are interested in seeing the next steps taken. Is there any objection to that from the council? No. So seeing none, I think, Mr. McGrail, you laid out some of those next steps. I would also ask if there's anyone on the council who's interested in, kind of working on this specifically, to let me know. And at our next meeting, we'll talk about how we want to frame that out. But otherwise, I expect we'll be seeing you again in the coming months.
We will. If I could coordinate those steps through the town administrator?
That would be great.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Wonderful.
Thank you for
Well,
your time.
thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, moving on. Item number 6 is our continuing tour through the fiscal 2025 budgets. While we're kind of shifting around and waiting for Mr. Gill here, Mr. Mayo, do you have any starting comments?
No, I'll let Kevin jump right in. I think these are kind of fairly benign budgets. There isn't a lot of personnel issues and things like that in it. I will say that I've been watching insurance over the last few years, general insurance, and unfortunately that is going up more than we would like, and I think that's part and parcel of what's happening in the world of disasters and everything. And I get a lot of publications on that. When you do get to the parking budget, Kevin will go through that, but we did have a employee that passed away in there that we are not replacing. So that's why that maybe looked a little bit different to people that didn't know. But other than that, I think Kevin's ready to rock, and we have John Spinello on us remotely as our insurance advisor. He's done a great job for us for longer than I've been here, John, I think.
Great. And Sherry, do we have anyone from FinCom, excuse me?
No, we do not.
Dan Sherman may be joining us more on the retirement one. But
Okay.
These are.
All right. Well, then, Mr. Gill, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, town council members. The first two budgets we'll look at tonight, the general insurance and the workers' comp budgets. I'll do a quick overview, and if there are any specific questions, John Spinello is online tonight with us. John is the expert with regards to these two budgets. The general insurance budget, we're recommending an increase to this budget of $36,700 over the current fiscal year. This increase breaks down $34,000 to the tax levy portion, $1,600 to the water division, $1,100 to the sewer division. This budget covers the town's buildings, motor vehicles, professional liability, and cybersecurity insurance. Total budget request for fiscal 25 is $559,425, with $514,925 coming from the tax levy, $28,000 coming from the water enterprise, and $16,500 coming from the sewer enterprise.
Any questions from the council or Mr. Spinello? Any further context you'd want to share?
I do, actually. Property insurance continues to be in a hard market. Hard market would be defined as high insurance costs, higher reinsurance costs, coverage restrictions, some cases carrier withdrawal. We've seen that in California, Florida. We've seen catastrophes all over the country. And although it doesn't have really a direct impact on Wakefield, it has an indirect impact on us because of higher reinsurance costs. I believe that that's going to continue in years to come. And we have to navigate through that. And you do that through high deductibles, and maybe self-insuring things or items that you normally would just insure. I remember when our rate for a property rate was 3 cents. They put that on $300 million. That's $90,000 a premium. 5 years ago, it was 6 cents. And that today, if we had actually taken the renewal terms that they wanted us to last year, it would have been a little over 9 cents. So 9 cents on 300 million is $270,000, and the price was actually $277. I sent out the schedule of all the policies and with the 3 years of premiums, and you'll note that for the most part, all the premiums are flat, except for property. So all the money that would normally go to increases there is going towards property insurance. After our meetings last year, in April is our renewal season for applications, indications were that heavy property accounts, which we are, we're seeing 10 to 20% increases. So I started to float the idea of taking our $75,000 deductible to $250,000 with Steve and see where that would take us. I remember we put up 75,000 years ago, and I thought that was a lot. So I didn't tell the carrier, I wouldn't until they gave us their pricing. And but they came back to us and said, we're going to give you 3 options for your property. 2 were non-starters. And the other one, they said that they couldn't give us any more than $300 million of coverage. And we were going to go over that. And so there's the restriction that I was talking about earlier. They said, we'll give you 2 $150 million limits. And so I said, and you choose what goes in those categories. So I took the high school, put in one, junior high in the other, and worked my way down. And I end up eliminating 3 locations, 2 at the Forest Glade Cemetery, the smaller buildings, and the high school concession stand, the football stadium. They were going to come off anyway if I could have got that $250,000 deductible. So they came back with their pricing at $278,000 or so on our property. And so we asked for the $250 deductible, and they came back and said that they couldn't give that to us. They didn't have a filing for it, that no other town has asked for something that high. So we went from 75 to 100 on all perils except for wind, which was $250,000. For that, they gave us back $18,000. I said, well, that's reasonable, taking $18,000 when the difference is really only 25 from 75 to 100, except for wind. And wind wasn't really something I was too worried about. So, why $250,000? Well, it's not unsupported. We haven't had a property loss since we've been in this program in 30 years. Our loss history supports a high deductible. I think you have to navigate through this issue. I don't want to see the rate go to 10 cents, And looking forward, in about 3 years, you'll be putting out about $150 to $175 million on this statement of values when the high school goes online. So $250 doesn't look as bad. I'd rather pick up the premium savings in the meantime. When I talked to the district manager about getting the company to file, because we're in a file and use state, I started that in December, and as of last Thursday, they hadn't filed yet, but there is plans to do that. So I'd like to see what the $250 deductible looks like. I'd like to keep a clean loss history. It helps when you negotiate your renewal prices. And certainly the carrier appreciates it too. So I'd like to keep the program tight and premium. So that's why I think that's the vision that I have, and kind of see how it goes. So I think I've taken up enough of your time. So if there's any question on that or any other policies that were in the schedule I sent, I'd be happy to talk about them.
Any questions from the council? Mr. Spinelli, you did mention, so obviously the high school building project coming into play. Do we have a sense as to what that might do to our premiums going forward? I mean, obviously the value of a new building is a lot more significant than the value of the greatly depreciated building that we currently have. Is it a simple sort of straight line kind of value to premium type calculation, factoring aside, kind of the higher deductible if we do end up going to 250,000?
Well, I mean, that's why I focus on that rate.
Yeah.
Right? The rate was going to be about 9.25. We got it down to about 8.25. So let's just take 8.25 on probably $150 million, because the current high school we have, it's really undervalued on a statement of values. We have blanket building coverage, so I don't really get too concerned about individual buildings. But right now we're carrying about $85 million for the high school, which was my junior high school, by the way. And my Woodville school was right next door. But that was only a few years ago, too, by the way. The $85 million that we're carrying on that now, and I think the new high school is in that 225 million. So 140,000 at 8 cents. That's over $100,000 more than where we are today. So it's important that we keep that rate as down as much as we can. And I think when we have the loss history to support a high deductible, I think we should, if it's available and it makes financial sense, I think we should take it.
Great. Thank you. Councilor McLean.
One question, what does it mean when you say you would ask the company to file? I didn't catch that.
So the company, all companies have to file what they use, whether it's a private passenger auto carrier, if whatever rates they want to use, they file and they use them until they're disapproved by the Division of Insurance. The company didn't have a filing for anything higher than $100,000 deductible at the time, because I asked them last May and our renewal was in July. So I've been after them since December, and my last conversation was last Thursday with the district manager, territorial manager, about getting on them so I can get that filing in. I don't know if there's a cost to it. I don't really care. I mean, just they should be doing it now, because more towns should be looking at high deductibles, and taking some of the lower value buildings off that aren't, let's say, an integral part of the operation of your town. I think that's the way it's going to go for quite some time. And so I think you have to control it when you can. And that's my, see where that goes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions? No. So seeing unless there's an objection from the council, I'm going to hold on a vote until the end, just since we do have to do a roll call to save us a little bit of time, if everyone's okay with that. Okay. All right, then let's move on to budget number 43, workers' compensation.
Yes, the workers' comp budget, we also work with John Spinello on this budget. For fiscal 25, we're recommending an increase of $8,910 over the current fiscal year. This increase breaks down. The tax levy portion is going to be increased $13,110. The water division, $1,820. The sewer division actually saw a decrease of $4,720. And the municipal light department saw a decrease of $1,300. The total budget request for fiscal 25 is $501,910, with $447,110 coming from tax levy, $9,220 coming from the water enterprise, $5,880 from the sewer enterprise, and $39,700 from the gas and light enterprise.
Great. Mr. Spinello, any context here?
Yes, this budget is actually in very good shape and has been for the last couple of years, and I think it will be going forward. The three components of it I underlined in my cover letter, and one is the experience modification, and you'll see that it went from 0.99 to 1.13. The experience period is a 3-year period prior to the one that we're in. And we had one bad year in there, 21 and 22. The year before was fine, the year after was fine. And I have to report that since July of last year to the 29th or last Thursday, year to date, we only have $58,000 in losses. So we're trending in a really good direction. We have been, but we had a bad year at 21, 22. We didn't have any more additional claims, about the same amount we always have. It was just bad in that we had 6 claims over $50,000. We had knees, back, rotator cuffs. It was just one of those things that and we had 6 claims that were still open. We still have 3 that are open from 2 years ago. Very unusual. But I don't think that it all indicates that we're in a downward trend, just the opposite, I think. The other 2 components of this budget are rates and payrolls. And the rates have really countered our experience modification here. Unusual in the last 2 years that the Workers' Compensation Bureau has filed 3 times, once for an increase and then 2 decreases. They usually do that in January. And I use those rates, and most of the time the Division of Insurance approves that in April, long after we're done here. Last 2 years, the Division of Insurance has decreased the rates issued by the Bureau. And then this last year in '23, both the Division of Insurance and the Attorney General took the 4% decrease and decreased it by 10%. And now the rates I'm using today have been decreased by the Bureau by 8.3%. So we benefited from that, in that when I'm all done putting the budget together, the rates have gone down in April. So when the policy is renewed, we've had more premium in there than we need. And that's a flexibility I haven't had in a long time. So last year we returned $6,300 rather than before then I had too many reserve fund transfers. So, and then this year there's about $14,000 that's going to be left over in this budget. But in those 2 years, I increased payroll. I padded up some payroll, especially in the school department. As you can realize, it's a good thing for us to have more payroll there. And we're now getting return premiums and audits instead of additional premiums. So, the rates have offset our experience mod, and we've been able to increase payroll in the meantime. So I would say this is in really good shape going forward.
Great, thank you. Any questions from the council?
I'd just like to say that shoulder, the knee, the back, I have all those ailments, but none of the claims are for me.
We appreciate that for many reasons, Steve. It's good to have you on the job.
Town administrative is excluded from.
We told him he's not allowed to climb ladders anymore, especially not on the job. All right. Well, seeing no questions, I think we are set for those 2. Mr. Spinella, if you want to take off or stay, your choice. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John. Thank you. Everyone have a good night.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Gill, Animal Inspector, budget number 22.
Animal Inspector's budget, we are recommending an increase to this budget of $725 over the current fiscal year. This increase is under contractual services. The professional services line item went up $1,125, or 3%. There was a decrease in the telephone line item, $400, based on usage. We do collaborate with the contractor that we use on this. That we actually do collaborate with the town of Reading, where we split the $250 weekend charge fee. We split that between Wakefield and Reading, so the Wakefield cost is $6,500 a year. Main expenses within this budget, the contractual services, professional services line item, which is for contracted animal control duties and vet services as needed. The sundry charge is $1,500, which is a dog pound rental fee that we pay to the town of Saugus. Total budget request for fiscal 25 is $41,325.
Any questions from the council? I just have one, Mr. Gill, on the dog pound fee. It looks like we haven't spent anything for the last 2 fiscal years. Is that just a timing question?
Yes.
Okay.
Might also point out that the intermunicipal agreement with Reading is expires June 30th, 2024. I think it's worked out very well. We've actually saved some money. I'm actually very pleased with this budget. We've saved a lot of money over the years from where it was the years before, when we actually had an employee and paid benefits and things like that. So this has worked really well, and I think the service has been excellent.
Great. And I assume from a Reading perspective, we
They-
get similar feedback?
Yeah, they've
Great.
had no issues, so I'll be reaching out to them to see if they want, I'm assuming the new town manager will want to continue with that, so I'll let you know.
Okay, thank you. All right, Councilor Dabrowski.
I recognize it's not a huge part of our budget overall for the town, but do we have like any sense of utilization? Like how often are we, like how many calls do we have in a given year? How many instances do we have?
This is based on per call,
Okay.
so it's like,
So this is
is based on
it's
per
true
call.
to-
True
okay,
to, yeah,
true
other
to,
than
okay.
there is a weekend on-call fee plus per call, but these are based on per calls.
Okay. So this could be driven up or
Up or down,
could
yeah.
be or less
Or
as a
less,
result.
as we go, yeah.
All right, let's move on to item D, budget number 24, parking.
The parking clerk's budget, we're recommending a decrease to this budget for fiscal '25 of $1,649. Kenny Stake, the former animal control officer, who is retired, now handles the responsibilities for this department. He works 6 hours a week. Mike Narcella was the part-time hearing officer. Unfortunately, he passed away recently. So we did not fund the part-time hearing officer in this budget. We did bump up the line item for Kenny Stake a little bit to handle some of that extra duties. This budget does handle revenue for the town. We collect somewhere between $35,000 and $40,000 a year in collections from this department annually. The total budget request for fiscal '25 is $10,924.
Any questions from the council? Councilor McLean.
It's rare that I'll ask a question about a budget that's going down by 13%. But when you mention the revenue side, it's not that I'm looking for revenue, but I wonder whether we should consider more hours from another standpoint, which is that the police don't really have the time to be going out and ticketing. And we can paint all the sharrows in town we want, but you can get doored on Chestnut Street the same as you can get doored on Main Street. And it seems to me that we might want to focus a little bit more on enforcement in terms of parking. I don't like my neighbors to get tickets, but if I have complaints often from citizens saying that, this one's parking on the street for too long, it's a 2-hour parking, this one's not a resident, and so on and so forth.
Right.
And I wonder whether increasing the budget might actually be a good idea. Just a thought.
So the parking enforcement officers are in the police budget, so it's a different budget.
This is different.
Different budget, yeah.
So what
This
is, what is
This is really processing the tickets and handling appeals and things like that.
Oh, it's just administrative.
This is more administrative.
Well, then
yeah.
we should add it to the police budget.
So in the police budget, there are 2 parking enforcement officers, and it's about $48,000 a year in enforcement costs.
Next year, we'll get a third.
Okay. All part-time, so there's no benefits.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, let's move on to budget number 45, retirement.
Last budget is the retirement board budget. Sherry, I'm not sure if Dan Sherman is on Zoom tonight.
Kevin, he was on, but he's not now.
Okay.
I sent him a message, haven't heard from him.
Okay, yeah, he said he was going to try to make it if he could.
Yeah.
That's fine. The retirement board budget for fiscal '25, we're looking to increase that $443,757 over the current fiscal year. This increase breaks down under the tax levy portion. The increase is $347,270. The water, sewer, and light department enterprise transfers increased a total of $96,487. This budget is based on a updated funding schedule voted by the Wakefield Retirement Board, runs through 2036, and is based on a 2022 actuarial valuation. We are required to do the valuation every 2 years. Our current funding ratio is approximately 70%. We use a investment return of 7.4%. Total budget request for fiscal '25 is $8,289,749. with 6,756,505 coming from tax levy and 1,553,289 coming from the enterprise transfers.
Any questions from the council? Vice Chair McLean.
Just a quick point. I think this one flies under the radar sometimes, and I just want the public to understand, we are funding this. It looks like probably what, Kevin, about a 6% increase year over year, more or less.
It runs about 6, maybe a
Yeah.
little bit under.
So the town is putting out of our budget, $7,274,050 more or less into retirement every year. And the gas and light is putting in another $1 million. And I just wanted to point that out. I don't think people always understand, we're not just paying the wages, we are also funding the retirements.
Right.
And by 2036, we should be in pretty good shape. Is that
Correct.
the theory?
Right, that this will drop substantially coming 2036.
Can't wait.
Yes.
And I think to that point, Mr. Mayo, I mean, our funding ratio of 70%, I mean, that does compare pretty favorably.
I think it's pretty good right now.
Across most municipalities, if I recall from the data I've seen.
I would agree. Yeah.
But, this is also why when we talk about funding, our pension obligations, when we talk about funding OPEB, these are the types of reasons why it's important, because otherwise it's operating expense that just eats up more and more of your budget every year. Any other? Yep, Councilor Dabrowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Gillen, looking at this, I know we're looking at 2036 is kind of like the golden year. Do we have any sense of where we're trending in terms of what our actual spend is on retirement, say over the next decade? Are we looking at going up? Because obviously, I know we're looking at more baby boomers, but also people are passing. So, do we have any sense of?
As with mostly everything, it will continually going up.
And presumably for the next decade, but then after then we may see a bit of a
level.
decline, right?
Correct, yes.
Okay. So by that point, by the time we're like basically fully funded,
Right.
we'll actually be in a very good position. So
Exactly.
those sitting around here, can take the credit for
We'll be
it.
collecting.
Yeah. Right, exactly.
In
Yeah.
2036.
So we're
Well,
basically
you'll
in a
be
very,
Steve. The rest of the other 6, 7 of us don't get to collect anything.
no, right. So we're kind of like, we're duly benefiting in that we're probably at a higher point now, and we'll continue to be at a higher point in terms of the payout, whereas by 2036, our funding will be awesome,
Right.
and the payout would presumably decline
Exactly.
commensurately.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, I will take a motion to approve the general insurance, workers' compensation, animal inspector, parking, and retirement budgets as presented.
So moved.
Seconded.
Do we have any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll take a roll call vote. Councilor Smith-Galvin?
Yes.
Councilor Vincent?
Yes.
Councilor Danahy?
Yes.
Councilor McLean?
Yes.
Councilor Butt?
Yes.
Councilor Dabrowski?
Aye.
And myself, yes. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you very much, Mr. Gill. Appreciate it
Thank you.
tonight, as always.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Stick around for the warrants.
All right, we're gonna shift our presenters right now and move on to item number 7A, which is the updated draft of the bike and pedestrian plan. So, Mr. Renaud and Ms. Kakinda, if you wouldn't mind taking a seat, and I'll let you go ahead whenever you're ready.
Hi, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. So we want to thank you for having us here again tonight. We are here to give another update on the bike and pedestrian plan that Bill and I have been working tirelessly on for 3 years, I think officially. Since the last time we were both here in December, Bill and I have made a number of updates to the plan, which were reflected in the document that you received last week. Many of the changes that you've seen are more structural changes and just add a little more details on the specific recommendations. Just a reminder for anyone that's watching at home and you guys as well, this plan is put forth to you guys to encourage safe walking, biking, and rolling to our town's wonderful assets, including schools, commercial districts, Lake Quannapowitt, and many other local destinations and surrounding communities. This plan is also put together to advance the town's complete street policy, which was approved back in 2017 by the town council. And as part of this policy, it provides Public Works kind of design recommendations to make complete streets. And so with that being said, I think this will also help Bill's office quite a bit when it comes to streamlining the town's design process. So with that said, I'm going to pass it to Bill, and he's going to kind of cover what we've done since the last time we were with you guys.
Sure. So, I'll start off just kind of talking about kind of, you know, what we've been spending our time on. And one of the main things that you'll find in this document was more of a reorganization of how the sections are created into more of a multi-level format. We received a bunch of questions at previous meetings from Councilor Vincent as well as Councilor McLean on, you know, how all of these things fit together. So we spent a good amount of time trying to reformat to get to something I think that was probably a little bit more digestible, hopefully, so we could actually answer questions on specific sections as we go forward with this. Most of those updates were done to Chapter 3, the policy recommendations, and Chapter 4, the project recommendations. So quickly kind of running through what we did, we consolidated the cross-section subgroup and the bicycle accommodation subgroup. I believe that was a comment from Councilor Vincent on a lot of the redundant and conflicting information that was in the plan. So we've kind of combined those so that they're all together, reformatted Chapter 3 and clarified the general recommendations and requirements for bicycle accommodations and pedestrian rolling accommodations. We reformatted to provide example photos and cross-sections at each tier. Those are still in development for the final cross-sections, but that's been done. We also expanded those we expanded those tiers to include some of the different types of configurations. So whether, you know, a protected bike lane is being protected by a curb, whether it's being protected by a parking area or, you know, on-street parking. So we try to provide you with those different, photos and cross sections so you can tell, you know, what those would look like. And then we also expanded on our crosswalk and sidewalk chapters in Chapter 3, as they had a lot of, I would say they were a little weak in substance, so we expanded on those pretty significantly to talk about what goes into a crosswalk design and sidewalk design, and also some of the considerations that should be taken as we get into implementing. Jumping into Chapter 4, which is our project recommendation section. The first and foremost was the addition of the TAC recommendation and town council approval to all of the bike and ped plans. This is something we talked about in the last couple of meetings, so that's been incorporated into Chapter 4. We also looked at consolidating Chapter 4 and reorganizing the hierarchy of the bicycle network projects. So I believe, Councilor McLean, this was one of your comments early on, where it was kind of confusing how the greenway corridors fit into the regional network and the landline, and then how we have individual Wakefield corridor branches or segments of the greenways, and then it kind of goes down into the street-specific projects. So we've kind of reorganized that, so it's a little bit clearer on how these projects kind of fit into the overall regional scheme. And then within the arterial and collector section, we looked at grouping the projects into bicycle and sidewalk accommodations as separate sections. And these would all be the projects that are not included in any of the regional networks. So these are just kind of Wakefield-specific things to get to our regional destinations. Aside from that, we just tried to make sure that we were formatting it to have consistent information through each of the project scopes and all of those different sections. Our list hasn't really changed from our recommendations. That's all still the same. So you're not seeing many changes in this area. And then we also initiated our public feedback process. So we're taking public comments that started on the 16th of February and closes on March 1st. As we were prepping this presentation, we had about 36 respondents. And Erin's kind of taken together some of the common themes that she saw through them with the number of folks that were kind of in those themes. You know, most of them were either global statements supporting or not supporting. And then we also got some suggestions for plan modifications, and then some other questions and clarifications, you know, that we would probably need to respond to. So these kind of give you the general themes. Kind of, we figured if 3 or 4 folks, you know, commented on it, we consider that to be a theme. And that was in the packet that you received. And then lastly, we're opening up for questions. I think one of the main things we would need to understand is how we would distill down this public feedback that we received so that you folks can make an educated, decision on the plan. So we were figuring it would make sense to draft a document that basically summarizes all of them. So every comment would be provided, who provided it, and then the ones that were either suggestions for plan modifications, our opinion, and then if it was a question or clarification, we provide the response to that. So that's how we were planning on doing that.
Yeah.
If that makes sense to the council. So a quick update today, just obviously a little bit of a reformat, and then obviously we're happy to answer questions as always. So.
Great. Well, thank you. And again, thank you for the work that's gone into this. I will say the reorganization and the clarification on the detail within the document was really clear, and I know that reflects a lot of comments from members of the council, a lot of comments from members of the public, but also a lot of work from you two and the team in terms of pulling this together. So appreciate all the efforts that have gone into that. Let me open it up to the council for any questions. Councilor Vincent?
I was like, wow.
Thank you so much. Was not expecting
Really?
When we got the presentation, the initial one in July of 2023, that had been principally put together by MAPC, to whom we paid $20,000, I was, as other council members were, disappointed that they had not consulted with critical stakeholders. What I want to thank you both for and commend you both for is that you filled a huge void, really that was created by MAPC by diligently meeting with critical stakeholders, fire, police, Council on Aging, Commission on Disability Issues, and Traffic Advisory Committee on numerous occasions to fill that void and make this a much better product than it had been as presented to us, in my opinion, in July of 2023. I did present you my comments late last week. I just wanted to briefly touch on 3 substantive questions that I had. The first one is on both pages 17 and 20 of the bike and pedestrian master plan. When and this was in the original version in 2023, MAPC said that they had 2 site visits in June 2021 and March 2022 where they asked questions of key stakeholders. I don't think that's accurate for the reasons I just articulated. I would ask both of you to look at that language and see whether you think that is still accurate. And when we can reconvene in March 11th, we'll talk beforehand to see whether I might amend that language before we vote on March 11th. The second one deals with page 20, where once again, MAPC said that at the second public meeting that they had on July 24th, 2022, that was an opportunity to speak directly with stakeholders. I also don't think that was accurate, that took place at that meeting. I will note that when they briefed the TAC back in 2022, that was a different date. That was June 24th, 2022, not the one that was held in July. So if you could look at that as well to see what stakeholders they actually, I want to ensure that the document is accurate because this is a document the town council is going to vote on. So those are 2 components with dealing with stakeholders that I don't think MAPC did what they purported to say in their draft. The next one is on page 36, where it indicates that we got a grant to update our housing production plan. Updating has a very particular definition with housing production plan. Our housing production plan expired in February of 2020. When you have an approved housing production plan, then you can update it, and you can also ask the mass housing to renew it. Well, that housing production plan was not renewed, and it expired in February 2020. Now that it's been expired for 4 years, I believe what we have to do under the applicable law and regulations is have a new housing production plan. We can no longer update it because we're not under an approved housing production plan right now. The third thing, and I haven't decided if I'm going to do this on March 11th, but I just wanted to publicly say that I'm considering this. And this has to do with page 33 of the document under project recommendations, where you say that projects will go before the Traffic Advisory Committee and be approved by the town council. And I like that language in there. I'm contemplating having a motion that I wanted to mention it now so the town council can think about it before we reconvene on March 11th, that when it pertains to the Main Street side of the lake, any modifications to either the shared use path the bike lane or the parking spaces has to be approved by 5 of 7 town council members, not just a simple majority. That's with the shared use path, the bike lane, and the parking. Now, there is some precedent for this because we did this recently in the public naming asset policy that we approved, that we require 5 out of 7 people to have to approve that before we name a building or a structure after somebody. And I say that for a couple reasons. One, this is now part of the Mystic Highlands Greenway, which means other municipalities are going to rely on the fact that we're going to take that part of the lake and have a shared use path, a bike lane, and parking. So if we change that, that will impact what other municipalities are relying upon. So I haven't decided I'm going to do that, but I just wanted to let the council and the public know that I'm contemplating having an amendment just for that particular section of the bike pedestrian plan. But overall, I commend both of you for the work that you did recently in terms of improving this work product. And one of the questions I asked today of Mr. Mayo was, to what extent did MAPC help in the draft between what was presented to us in November and what was presented to us today? And the answer was, it was pretty much just you two. And it is a much enhanced work product from what it was before. So thank you. That's all I have, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Vincent. And just with regard to the first 2 recommendations that you highlighted, my assumption is that there is no objection from the rest of the council on making sure that those get corrected so that they are accurate as Councillor Vincent has suggested. All right, I'm going to take that silence as acceptance. So appreciate you guys making those updates for the next, the final version for vote at our next meeting. Any other questions? Councillor Dombrowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you both for this. I know that you've done a lot of work, and it shows, and this has been probably more of a project than either of you anticipated.
I would agree with that.
No question. I wanted to ask you about page 40 of the draft, and it's this diagram that is figure 32. I ask in part because obviously that this particular area has received a lot of attention, obviously, in our discussions in recent months. I know in some other places there are dimensions or measurements in terms of width. Could you maybe, Mr. Renault or Ms. Kokinda, can you just walk us through each of those segments, like from the lake across, like how many feet we're looking at?
All right. So MAPC had identified it as a 60-foot wide right-of-way and worked with us to develop this cross-section. So if you're looking at the left-hand side, so the shared use path, that is between 10 to 12 feet wide. Then we would add a 5-foot bike lane, 2 feet of grass area there. That would be probably some stormwater enhancements too. 8-foot parking, 2 12-foot lanes. Then you'd have a 5-foot sidewalk with, I believe it was a 2-foot buffer grass strip. So that'll get you to your 60 in and abouts, right around there. There are sections that are 55. We've received comments on that. I've done some additional research into it. So, I mean, again, and I've mentioned this a ton. All of these are going to require a real design where I have to actually survey and do that stuff. So I'll continue to look into it as questions have arisen. And there are sections that are only 55, which means something's going to have to give there. So we would be making those decisions and coming back to you with that as a, as a change when we're moving forward with the project. Higher level, 10,000-foot view. I'm using these to identify areas where I'm going to spend time to, look to install bike and ped, or more bike accommodations realistically. The pedestrian stuff we're doing pretty well, I think, already. The council has been very generous with funding for that, and we've made some big strides. Obviously, our bike network is probably not up to snuff at this point, and looking at it in every single street is how a lot of other communities have done this. I think I covered this point in the December meeting. We're looking at this so that we're not putting bike lanes every place. That we're looking at strategic locations where they make sense, and then as other accommodations or things are requested down the road, we can look to install them. But right now, the focus would be on these arterials and collectors that have been identified, and then some of these other shared streets, on the low volume roads where it makes sense because we can't fit things. We were adamant about looking at parking. I know that's come up a bunch in the comments that I've received. And, you know, realistically, we looked at sections where we've moved it to these shared streets because we would lose parking in front of businesses, mainly in Greenwood.
Yeah.
So, you know, we've definitely taken all of these things into account in this plan. So to kind of cover both of those, it's just, you know, something at a 10,000-foot view, we're looking at, these are the areas that we want to be focusing on for the improvements.
And I think something else to note too is we don't have the money in our hands right now. These projects aren't happening tomorrow. So this plan is also just a tool for us to, when we are looking for funding outside of using tax dollars. You know, this is kind of a tool in our pocket that we can use. But I just want the public to know that just these projects aren't the end all be all. We still need the funds to make them be done. So.
And I guess that's where I continue to have a disconnect with the idea of this being a master plan, having worked on like other master plans over the years, in that there's reference to recommendations, but there's also as you mentioned, reference to projects. And I think of a master plan more in terms of principles, like from a broader sense, and not getting down to the granular level of detail, which I feel like in some ways this does, which I respect, but it feels like it goes beyond the scope of what a master plan itself should be. It just stands out that way, and I think we're kind of conflating terms, and I think projects and recommendations are very different than principles or just general guidelines, if you will. And the reason I was asking about figure 32 specifically is I was comparing that to some of the other drawings that did have the spacing, and it feels like, I understand this is still a concept, but the right of way of 60 feet is the right of way of 60 feet. Like
in sections.
In sections, like you said.
60 feet, sections are 55.
And 55 at others.
Yep.
So this configuration, as you've laid it out, that's 60. So that's kind of like I'll say our best case, our widest point, if you will. And even with that, I think one thing that's getting lost in this, there's been so much focus on trying to improve the experience, and specifically for bikers. And I think there was some reference at one point talking about to shelter the bike lane. Well, I look at this figure in particular, and while it preserves parking, it actually it allocates a foot less for parking, 8 feet versus 9 in other places. So I think about it from the perspective, again, using the lake regularly. And I don't park by the lake for the most part, but I use it in other ways. But I think about that from the perspective of, so the parking there is already pretty tight. It's not very wide. And so we mentioned earlier about the vulnerable populations, children and elderly. Agreed. The idea of even shaving even a foot, which is close to 10% of the parking capacity at the widest spot, would mean that the propensity for a young child in the backseat to open a door and perhaps be opening into traffic, or an elderly person perhaps having an issue and then the door swings open. I just think that that's one of the considerations that should also be made into this, because we're thinking I think it's very bike centric from my perspective, but I think when we're talking vehicular, it's not just, well, can a car park and can a car travel, but also can they do those two things safely? And I'm not convinced that there's been the level of emphasis, and it's no fault of your own, of either of you, but I think there's been so much focus on, what about, making sure that bicyclists have protections, and I respect that. But I also recognize that the vast majority of users are not going to be bicyclists. So over this 60 feet that we're talking about, the vast majority are going to be walkers, runners, and predominantly drivers. And my office happens to be literally across the street from, or on a street where they eliminated a lane in Boston and put in, a bike lane. I've probably seen 2 bikers, but what I have heard is a tremendous amount of horn honking in traffic, because there's been a lot of traffic backups as a result of that, and a lot of congestion, which in turn then ends up causing more emissions. So there's the other side of this that I think we need to be mindful of. So when I'm thinking about 60 feet at most, 55 at other places, how are we best utilizing that so that we're doing the most good and the most safety for the most number of users?
Yep, for sure.
And I'm not seeing that in this kind of a design. I mean, like the 2 feet, I mean, think about how 2 feet is. That's pretty narrow too. I know you've done the best here. Shave 5 feet off of this equation, and then where do you stand? So I have a real concern about the fact that not taking into account the vehicular consequences of having narrower driving lanes and also narrower parking areas, could have it from a safety perspective as well, because I think that's another part of the equation here that we can't lose sight of in all of this. I'd also point out that I don't know how to better pursue outreach, but 36 respondents is by no means representative of anything. And I know that it's mixed opinions, so that's fine. But I mean, we probably had half of those respondents in this room, in this audience tonight. So I don't think that that's necessarily representative. Nor do I think that it means that those that are have other feedback have engaged. So I mean, 36% of or 36 respondents is about 0.132% of our population.
And we do have more since.
Yeah, I just counted 50, but just to give you a better.
Even, I mean, 50. I mean, we're not.
No,
even
but
like
just to give you a better idea, when you were doing surveys or anything, unfortunately, that isn't. I'm actually surprised that we got 50. To be completely transparent, when I've done these processes before, I know it's not the best, but I mean, we'll work with Jen McDonald and see if we can get it out a little.
And
broader
I don't know.
reach.
I don't know what it is about that. I mean, obviously, Safe Streets Working Group has a vested interest in this, and so I know they've gotten the word out. Much like we're hearing a lot about, the one of the ARPA proposals that's coming up at the next meeting, because obviously, people have coalesced and then they've gotten the word out. But I don't think that when we're dealing with such small numbers, we can derive much from it at all. I mean, even some of the other surveys I recall, recently we had I think like 400. For instance, again, not a large sampling, but
Well, this did get. I mean, how many
more.
did we have in this one? 250.
Yeah,
Somewhere around
something
there.
like
Somewhere
that.
around 250 as part of our initial survey too. Don't forget. So
Yeah, we did a survey as
you
part
know, I
of
think
this.
some folks also probably are looking at it like we've already provided comments and stuff too. So, I mean, I hear your point, but I mean, 200 folks in a survey is a pretty solid survey.
Right.
To give you
but
an
again,
idea,
yeah.
and if we're at 50, I mean, I wouldn't say that isn't necessarily the best number, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to receive more. I mean, it closes in another week or so.
Friday.
So,
Yeah, I mean, it closes Friday. We're at 50 now. I just don't think that this council or you both can really glean too much from what those responses are. And they seem to be somewhat balanced from what I'm looking at here. So it's not like there's necessarily skewing one way or the other.
yeah,
I just don't know that
I would
it's
say, 60-40, 65, 35.
40,
Yep,
yeah,
yep, somewhere around there.
More so, I'd say in favor of having
Having bike lanes.
heavy bicycle presence.
Yep.
But,
and walking, pedestrian
Yeah, and-
connections.
and walking,
I
too,
don't want to
yeah.
forget that. That's a
Yeah.
huge part of this plan too. Yeah.
But I do think just kind of keeping that in mind, the fact that there are consequences to people who are, and we talked about these vulnerable populations being able to enjoy the lake, and that was a big part of the parking aspect to it. If we're tightening that some more at the widest spot, what's that going to mean in practical terms for them as well? Because I think that's a safety concern equally.
Understood.
And exponentially more so because we have far more people that are parking or driving than we do that are going to be biking ultimately.
Yes, I see it. Thank you. Councillor Smith-Galvin.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank Bill and Aaron for all of the work that they have put into this. I mean, 3 years, much longer than we ever had thought. I just in response to a few things, obviously the parking issue continues to be something that people feel strongly about. I guess I just will reiterate again that that is a beautiful part of our town, and I'm really shocked that people are protecting it for cars, not for people. I mean, people getting out of cars, the area, and all of this engineering will be done. Bill will do all of this engineering. We will, the town council will look at it. The traffic advisory will look at it. I think that, having projects like this is very appropriate in the concept of a plan. I actually provided some feedback during the TAC where we have policy recommendations. Maybe there are more design recommendations. I mean, I do think that there might be some language there that can be tweaked a little bit, but I think in general, there's been a tremendous amount of feedback on this. And for Councilor Dombrowski to say that it's vested interest, this is a group that cares about safe streets for everybody. No different than other, Lake Quantapowhat who cares about the lake. And we have, citizens who have put a lot of time into this. So I think that we've had really good feedback. I think that this body, the 7 of us were elected to make decisions, and that we've been talking about this for 3 years. So these are, best practices, policy recommendations, and I hope at the next meeting that we can make a decision to do, one way or the other what we were elected to do. We've gotten the feedback, we've gotten the experts involved, and I really think we have a really good plan in front of us because of the diligence of our staff and our community and the experts that we've engaged. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ganahee, then Councillor McLean.
You can go first. You can go first.
You sure?
Yes, because I see you still.
Okay. Councillor McLean.
Questions and comments. I haven't worked on this for 3 years because I haven't been involved for 3 years. To the extent that it's taken 3 years and that we've had to call you back, I don't apologize because we've had a terrible work product, and I'm not blaming you two for it, for a long period of time, in my humble estimation. Where's MAPC? They're not here tonight. Where's our
Budget.
Budget, yeah,
It's budget related. I mean, that's what it comes down to.
Where's our $20,000? I don't think it was well spent. We've had many iterations. You two have, brought this down to a more reasonable situation, and I, at least, I compliment you for that. Whether I ultimately agree with this plan or not, a statement was made that we're not trying to take away anyone's parking. I would say that had we not interjected ourselves and done our jobs, the parking on the lake would have disappeared. But a majority of this board changed that aspect of this plan. When you say, Mr. Renault, that we are going to get more comments, and you said something about that, I'm just curious, is this another thing that's going to be a delay? I mean, what's...
Well, I mean, we're talking about the 11th, to be honest with you, to distill all the comments down, provide comments and responses. I mean, for it to get in time for the next council meeting, we'd have to turn it around in under a week, which I don't think is reasonable. I mean, we'd be, in all likelihood, here in the later March meeting or the early April meeting, depending on the depth of all the comments.
Okay.
So that's news to me. The expectation was that we would be voting on this on the 11th. So, Mr. Mayo, maybe if we can kind of take that offline. I think I would like to make sure that the process can accelerate. Obviously, want to make sure folks have a chance to see the comments, but
And I guess
I don't think we need to take another month to collate comments.
And I guess that's my question for you guys. I mean, where would you like to see all the comments? Do you want us to distill it and kind of send a summary of what we've seen?
I think from the council standpoint, if any councilor would like to see all the comments, they should be able to see them.
Okay.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, not done.
Thank you. No, I know. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I just wanted to clarify timing.
I ran around the lake today, as I often do. I was passed by a faster gentleman to my left, going the other way, and he was going the wrong way because if you refer to page 35, we're all supposed to be going clockwise. I brought this up at the TAC meeting, and I think we should probably change that on page 35. We're not really going clockwise. People are going both ways, right?
Yeah, people walking are, but the biking folks, they only have one direction to go.
Okay.
Because we have lanes in one direction.
Well, it said
around.
clockwise shared use path. That's the shared use path is not.
Yeah, it shouldn't say shared use path, so I can update.
Well, I think it does.
Yep.
And
I can
the
make that
shared
change.
use path at the traffic advisory, former selectman Carney and myself were both asking questions, might be along the lines of what Councilor Dombrowski was driving at, which is, do we have the room? Because on the graph, we don't really have the footage listed out. And my concern, I was on the sidewalk saying, because there are runners, well, actually, if you go to page 7, there are those who walk, run, roll, skate, bicycle, walk dogs, and park to enjoy the lake. And that's a lot of traffic. We all know it, moving in two directions on the shared use path. If it's not big enough, I think that's a problem, especially if the bike lane is separated and exclusive for bicycles. So I'm concerned about the ROW, and you say MAPC, and I'll be honest with you, I don't have a lot of faith in MAPC right now, but MAPC said it was a 60 right away. where does the right of way come from? I mean, I can research a property and the
I did.
Middlesex Registry of Deeds.
So I received a bunch of comments at the TAC. So obviously I went into it. That's why I came and told you that there's sections that are 55.
Does it come from the MassDOT? If you go to MassDOT and you put in the street?
Parts of it will be there. Yep. They have a street layout component of it. Yep.
Because the one thing I didn't see in MassDOT, I've got it up on my screen now, is the number 60. I saw a lot of numbers, a lot of bigger numbers, probably where we have, maybe at the head of the lake by Lowell Street, et cetera. But I saw a lot of 58s and a lot of 54s. And I'm just curious too, like if you get up around Lowell, heading towards Lowell, a lot of those properties are very tight. And sometimes I will run that other side of the street at my own peril. And it's very narrow. So I'm wondering, are we going to some point in the future be telling those folks to move those stones back? Should they maybe be apprised of what it is we're doing here if we're actually adopting either a policy or, as Councilor Smith-Galvin said, design, which to me is actually, I don't want this to be design because we're not there yet. I mean, are we going to really have a 60-foot right of way? I don't see it on the pages.
There are sections that are 60 feet and there are sections that are 55, right?
Right, so we may have to trim back.
Yeah, we may have to trim back. That's to be honest with you, it looks like they would need to be.
And the shared use path, I mean, is that going to be sometimes 8 feet?
I don't necessarily think that would be the case. I think what would happen is that we would kind of make the bike lane hybrid. But again, I'd have to design it, and I haven't gone through it. So I don't even know if the 55 continues all the way through. It could narrow in the section you're talking about, right? I think that's probably even narrower.
Right.
Just looking at what it looks like out there. But yeah, again, without going full design and having all the survey completed and doing all that, I can't answer the question.
And right now, we really don't have any project, even the downtown area, which you can find on our website, right? You can find some specificity on the downtown parking area, or parking changes, if you will. That's really not even at a 25% design with public hearing, or is it past?
We're close. We're getting there. Yeah, I would envision that will happen this year for sure.
So that'll probably be the next project? As opposed to, well, we know we're on North Ave, right? We know we're going to complete North Ave.
We have North Ave. Bike lane is fiscal 26 on the tip, and downtown is fiscal 28 on the tip.
28. So something beyond that would be probably a time frame. Any of these other items throughout town would be at a time frame even more remote.
Yeah, unless we get other funding. I mean, we also have the Quad Gate project, so that will have some other work around North Ave in all likelihood too. So as we look at that full scope, that is funded through an earmark, so that'll be a project that comes soon.
By the absolutely terrible intersection at North and Church, that one, which is the Quad?
It's the Quad Gate will be on Broadway. But then we're looking at the other signals too and coordinating all that. So
it just seems to me, and I think I've said it at other meetings, that this is all so preliminary. I would really rather see a project at a time when we get closer to design, where we'll actually see where some of these measurements fall out.
Right.
I don't understand why we should be doing such a broad policy right now, whether you call it policy or design. Certainly don't call it design because we're not there yet.
I don't think so.
And that's primarily the problem I have. This is with the wayfinding signs. I know we can look for grant money to get wayfinding signs, but I see that this proposes that we put wayfinding signs all around the lake, right? I've always known where I am when I'm running the lake, but maybe somebody visiting wouldn't. But we also have them going on, potentially on streets like Jordan, Chestnut, Emerson, Gould, Converse, Fox, and Mountain.
Yes.
You think that's a good idea to have wayfinding signs on those streets?
If it's part of the network and the council agrees to do that, then yes, I do.
Yeah,
keep in mind, we also didn't hop in on a grant opportunity to have those signs funded.
And the grant will pay for the signs that I may not agree we need.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. And do you think we actually have room after all the work that's been done? I know we have a Sharrow on Albion Street. Do we have room for I think this calls for a protected bike lane on Albion?
It does. We have room for it, yes.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
And another thing I
when we
disagree
went for
with.
the grant, we didn't go for it as part of the grant. Otherwise, it would have been constructed as part of that. We decided to go with the Sharrows.
Yeah, it seems like it could have been done at that time if it was going to be done. The basically the problem I have is that this is all encompassing and it's very broad, and we don't have the specific designs on these projects yet. So to me, my question really is, why?
I think we talked about it in the first slide. So the idea here is that we have, so this body approved a complete streets policy that told us to look at every single street for bike and pedestrian enhancements. That's part of the complete streets, that's the tenet of the complete streets program, right? That provides us an opportunity on a cycle to get about $500,000 every 3 or 4 years or so. First one that we received, it just got upped. It was originally 400,000. That was the project that we did on Albion Street, right? Because we had that process completed. We went through and finished all the tiers and identified all these different projects, right? Then we're looking at, we're responsible still based on the actual policy to look at this on every single street that I'm paving, reconstruction, repaving, all of those. That's a lot of extra work to be coming here for every single project. So our thought, or my thought was, we'll develop this plan to identify areas where I need to be looking at bike enhancements. Doesn't mean that we're gonna do them all. Doesn't mean that I can fit any of the recommendations, but this is what it looks like can happen, potentially. And that's what I would be coming back with. Those will be the projects. As we get to pave those streets, I know that I need to spend extra time and plan to come before this body to get approval for any changes.
But you already know that.
But I do it,
I mean, Complete Streets is already out there, so this doesn't, you've already gotten grant money using Complete Streets.
yep, for one project.
Yeah.
And I think if you go through the complete streets tiers, so there's 3 tiers that you do. If you go to the tier 3 that has all the projects in it, I can tell you that most of them aren't constructible. They don't make sense. I had to cobble together 3 or 4 projects to get our Albion Street project done. So this is to streamline and make it easier so I know where to spend the time and what streets that I would go after grant funds for. I'm not doing it for every street. I mean, I'm not looking at grant funds for every single street in town to see if this would fit and that would fit. I'm going to identify the projects that I will spend the time on to determine if they need to be, they can be grant funded, and if I want to move forward with that.
I'm just saying that schedule that we have on there, that's been around for a while, right?
The
I mean,
schedule-
we've added a few things. We've added,
What schedule?
ARPA
What-
funds, the schedule of all the projects. It's not new. It's not brand new.
Yeah, I mean, some of them we've already started to tick
Right,
off because,
right.
yeah, and we've got different funding sources for them.
Right.
So, yeah.
I just think, you can still come to us project at a time. Okay, this one's next, and now let's take a
But I
closer
don't-
look at it and we vote.
But I think this plan helps Bill and his team have a better idea of where they should be prioritizing their time when they need to come to you guys. I think that's what a plan ultimately is. So I think that's why this document, I'm not going to speak for Bill, but from planning in general. So he's not dedicating all his time just doing project by project. He has it in front of him as a guide, knowing where to spend his time and energy and where we should be applying for grants. Mistake me if I'm wrong, but that's what a plan is. Yeah.
No, that's the idea. I mean, that's the big overarching thing from my perspective.
Right.
So this way I know, all right, these are a series of streets that are coming up for paving. Let's push this out 2 years, see if I can, get after, incorporate a bike accommodation and have it grant funded, or maybe it becomes a tip project, or maybe it becomes, a study that we do a little bit more on. And I'm not just going to plan to just go through and mill and overlay it.
I'd also like to see how North Ave works out. I mean, we have gotten a lot of commentary by people, who don't want the white poles. I don't know. I hear people's concerns about safety. I don't know how much safer they will make that. I wouldn't personally ride in it on a bicycle with a white pole to protect me because I don't think it would. But, I would like to see how some of these projects play out instead of signing on to everything now when we don't really have the detail. That's where I'm at.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Danahy?
So I want to thank you for all of your hard work on this, and it's made such I feel a greater level of comfort the last time when you came in and you showed us and you really listened to feedback. So I think this is great. The way I see this is that I see it as more as like an aspirational plan with details, which I think is kind of perfect because it's kind of like aspirational about where we want to be going as a community. In terms of being walkable and having it be safe and bikeable. And as we know, one of the biggest challenges that we have as we increase our housing is traffic. And I can attest, I know we are the traffic, I hear this, but traffic is really difficult. So if we can do anything to minimize it, and whether I actually am riding a bike, I'm not sure if I will be riding a bike, to be honest with you, but I'd like to support other people's opportunity to ride a bike because it'll help reduce traffic for everybody. So I see that, I see that we do need the details now, but each piece, we're kind of doing the pre-planning, and then each piece, those details can be changed and configured. But I think we have the basis down. I was not in favor of taking parking away from the lake because I'm not in favor of doing anything that takes something away to benefit another group. And that's a principled thing that I have. So I'm really happy that we were able to do that. I think that when it comes time, my biggest concern with this plan is around the lake. I'm having a hard time visualizing how it can be done safely, and how, I think there needs to be kind of a public awareness campaign as well, that because we had the flex poles, I still don't think it's going to be safe for children to be riding on the street. And I've heard people say, oh, I want my kids to be able to ride on the street, and that scares me. So I think there needs to be kind of a public awareness campaign to go along with this as well, around safe biking.
That's a good point.
But I really, I like it. I think that we're also being really mindful about the business district and about not taking parking away that could affect, local businesses from being able to want to come here because we don't have enough parking. So, I'm happy. I'm much happier with this. One thing that I do have a little bit of a concern with, and the parking was a big thing for me. The other thing are the flex poles, the flex poles. And I'm kind of conflicted because I think it's really important for a safety feature to have that, and it gives that extra barrier. I've also noticed that those flex poles, as I've been driving around, have been knocked down a lot, and that they're knocked down, and then they're dirty, and it just looks really, really awful. And I know that we talked about having that because it could be movable, and it's movable and for plowing.
So a little different than what you've probably seen. So we're looking at them as essentially like the cones that are placed. So they're very temporary. They'll be moved out seasonally. That's what we had discussed. The council had asked us to add it in. Again, we didn't have it as part of our original plan. We were asked to incorporate it. We did, and we discussed it as a temporary measure. So basically a series of cones that are placed, and they can be moved at any point if needed.
So temporary, so again, I think like short-term and long-term, so maybe temporary, because I know some people who are questioning whether or not people are going to use them, and is it worth it? So do it temporary, see how it is. If it doesn't work,
they can be removed.
Taken
down without a
But
problem.
I think that we should also be thinking about a permanent solution too, is that a barrier that doesn't have to be moved, that can look nice, because I just think we spent millions of dollars. We spent millions of dollars to put the telephone poles, hide them, to get, do all the wires underneath. And so I just want to be a little bit thoughtful about that.
Right.
So I think this is good. And the only other thing I will say is that I work at Boston University, and they recently, well, I don't know how long ago, but a few years ago, they created a lot of bike lanes all down Commonwealth Avenue.
Yep.
And I have to say is that the number of people who are biking there has increased tremendously. I mean, a lot of people have always, it's a university, so there's always been a lot of biking, but honestly, it is really crowded. So I do think that when you do build it, I do think that they will come. But I think the temporary structure could be good. So for me, it's about not taking away anything from one group to benefit another group. And I think it's also, the aesthetics are important to me too, is that, what does this look like, and making sure that it's aesthetically pleasing and that it's not impacting our business community. And I think that we're on a really good trajectory to getting there. And I understand that we're going to vote on this kind of in concept, but then in terms of the details of, can we do this around the lake? Is it going to make things too narrow? That'll be up for discussion. So, and it probably puts us in a better position to get grants, I would imagine, if we have our plan.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Butt, you had any comments?
Yeah, just I guess as one of the counselors that was here for the last 3 years, you worked on this. Thank you both. I would love to see the comments as how that you've gotten.
Yep.
You know, ideally that they're open till Friday. I do want to say that people always can email our counselors, and I will say not just the group Safe Streets, but people are excited about this. Every day I hear from somebody that's excited to make walking or biking easier and safer in town. And whether it's they're walking to farmland or they're walking to my library, our library for our book club meeting that ends at 8:30, and they're walking home at night. They want the light, they want safety, and we need to think about that, about all ages walking, biking safely. And that's I really want to echo what Anne said. This is aspirational, and we worked really hard on it. So I would, and so I would like to see those comments because we're not getting all of them. I think we're hearing from select people, and I do. And when we get those comments, it's not just Safe Streets that you met with. You've presented to Traffic Advisory last Friday. I see both chiefs here. If there's anything they want to add, I'd love to hear from them. But you've presented to the Youth Council and to the Environmental Sustainability Group. So individually, you haven't gotten a lot of comments, but you have presented this, the drafts, to a lot of different people. And I don't want to forget that either, that it's not just 50 or 250 that did it before. You've incorporated feedback from everyone. So I really have seen the progress in this, and I really thank both of you and your teams for the work on this.
Thank you, and I just want to add a couple of comments, and then we'll let you go for the evening. I think we've had a good set of feedback today. Again, really appreciate the work that's gone into this. As a work product, and as a work product that's improved and changed a lot, certainly over the last year and the 3 years you've been working on it. I am particularly excited. So, personally, I am not a biker, but as Councilor McLean noted, I am a runner and a walker. I am particularly excited at the additional detail that's been put in on the sidewalk and crosswalk sections. That's something that I think is really important. It's something that I think is really well put together and thoughtful around how we standardize what we do so that there's universal recognition of where a crosswalk is, what it looks like. It signals to drivers when you need to stop. It signals to pedestrians that this is a safe place to cross. We don't have that today in so many places. When I look around the lake, you see people crossing outside of crosswalks all the time on North Ave and on Main Street. And it is a huge safety issue, and the work that's been done, particularly in the last draft, to beef up those sections, I think has been really important. As we think about planning, I think it's important for all of us to recognize that planning is not a one and done process. It's an iterative process. It's something where you set a vision, you make that vision more specific, you keep going down further and further and further until you get something that you can actually build. And, it's frustrating because, right, we all want to see things get done. Like, we see great projects, we want to get them done tomorrow. But the reality is that involves a lot of iterative work to put a plan in place, to secure the funding for that plan, and then to get to the details of design. And I think this strikes the right balance between creating the vision that we need to really, really put forth what are the things that we want to do aspirationally, to give us enough detail to be able to start to go after grant funding to do these things, and then get to a place where we do the design and get it in front of the right folks. I think this strikes the right balance. I'm very excited about where it is, and again, grateful for all the work that you guys have done. So thank you for being here tonight for it.
Thank you.
And we'll see you in 2 weeks.
One more thing.
Can you say it briefly?
Briefly. I just want to go back to the feedback that we're getting is that one is that, just so everybody knows, this is what I teach and do. So it's not going to be representative of how, even if we had 1,000-person sample, I can't say that it's representative of how everybody thinks, because not everybody's having an equal chance of participation. It's really only those people who are interested in participating and are engaged. And so we're probably going to hear more from people who are really want it or really don't want it. And those people who are kind of like, well, let's see, this could be good, which is probably most of the people. And they're probably right now not focused on this. So it's in the comments, And the feedback that you're getting is not like a yes, no. We're not looking at quantitative data. We're looking at it as more of a qualitative
100%
to get
agree.
kind of like just general ideas of how people are thinking of this and giving you some ideas to think about. Not that you'll adopt them, yes or no, maybe yes, maybe no, but it might give something else to think about. So I just wanted to say that.
Well, thank you very
Thank
much.
you very
Appreciate
much,
it. Thank you for
everyone.
staying this evening
See
and
you in a
for
bit.
the members of the public who stayed as well. Let's move on to item 7B, the Energy Park Conservation Restriction acceptance. Mr. Mayo and Mr. Mullen, I see a legal document, and so I'm looking at you two.
This has been only going on for a year and a half, not 3 years. But as the council may recall, on November 19th, 2022, at our town meeting, the town really adopted the Energy Park plan, for lack of a better word, which is that area up on Hemlock Road, which will provide backup power to both the vocational school and the new high school. We had to go through a lot of hoops to get this, including getting approval by the state. The state state legislature did approve that, and this board accepted that. And then we did have to send this to conservation because, as you may recall, it was an area of some land that will have a conservation restriction on it, okay? That conservation restriction needs to be accepted by the town council, as the town is the owner of that land, and it's in your packet. It's like a kind of around the item there. So I'd love a motion to approve that. And Julie's still on?
She
Julie,
is.
I'll save this for you to sign, because I know this is near and dear to your heart.
I want to sign it.
I know you do. But this is a really great collaboration. I want to thank the Conservation Commission, the Town Council, the MLD for really working on this. And when this is signed, we send it into the Secretary of Energy Environmental Affairs. And once that's signed, we record it, and we can actually start building, which is what we'd like to do. So if I could, Mr. Chair, if there was a motion to sign this and approve it, be great.
All
So
right.
moved.
Thank you, Mr. McLean.
Seconded.
Thank you. Any discussion or questions? All right, seeing none, we'll take a roll call vote. Counselor Smith-Galvin?
Yes.
Counselor Vincent?
Yes.
Counselor Danahy?
Yes.
Counselor McLean?
Aye.
Counselor Butt?
Yes.
Counselor Dabrowski?
Aye.
And myself, yes. Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you very much.
Excellent.
And I'll
Thank
be
you.
happy to notarize the signatures. So
Okay.
you all are
it's
signing
going-
it freely and voluntarily, correct?
Yes.
Perfect.
All right, thank you. Item number 8 is an appointment to an unexpired term in the Zoning Board of Appeals. So this is for a voting member of the Board of Appeals to fill the term vacated by Jim McBain. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve Mickey Feely for the position on the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Do we have a second?
Seconded.
Any discussion or questions? Counselor Dabrowski.
I just want to point out that this became our practice, I think in 2020, to get the input of the leadership of the board, committee, or commission. And I think it has been quite instructive. It's always been intended to be instructive, but not determinative. I think that this is, I think it's an appropriate recommendation, and I support what they're saying, but I never want us to lose sight of the fact that ultimately we make these decisions, and we're not just rubber stamping whatever, you know, the chair of a particular board or committee or council is recommending. But I support this recommendation as laid out, independent of that, but also taking into account.
And to that end, I do want to mention as well, we did pass a policy last year where for new appointments to the Zoning Board of Appeals, we would have an interview process for them. We did not do that in this case because the recommendation was to promote an existing alternate member into a full voting member. But if we do act favorably upon this, when we do fill that open alternate position, we would follow that interview process. And I've actually asked Councilor McLean to kind of be the town council representative for that process when it does go forward. Councilor.
And I would also add that clearly we had two highly qualified candidates for this
Absolutely.
position. So we would hope that the candidate not chosen would apply for the alternate position that's coming up.
Correct. And from a timing standpoint, if we, again, do move ahead with the appointment of Mr. Feely, his alternate term was actually up in April, so the applications for those have already gone out, and I do believe the other candidate did apply as well as potentially others. So that will follow that process for the April appointments that we would otherwise follow. All right, there is a motion and a second on the table to appoint Mickey Feely to the unexpired voting term on the Zoning Board of Appeals. We'll take a roll call vote. Councillor Smith-Galvin?
Yes.
Councillor Vincent?
Yes.
Councillor Danahy?
Yes.
Councillor McLean?
Yes.
Councillor Butt?
Yes.
Councillor Dabrowski?
Aye.
And myself, yes. Motion carries 7-0. Item number 9, warrants. Councillor Vincent.
3 warrants. Warrant number 28 is 4.449 million, principally 1.15 million Treasurer's Office Department and 1.959 million Light Department. Next one is warrant article number 30. That's $5.485 million and change. Principally 1.1 million for Public Works, $936,000 Light Department, $950,000 Treasurer's Department. And warrant number 32 is $7.679 million. Of note there is $1.6 million Town Council related to the new high school. 1.455 million of that is from Sims, who we regularly see dealing with construction of the new high school. The other two of note are almost $1.4 million with Public Works and $2.484 million with the Light Department. Thank you, Chair Chines.
Thank you. Any questions from the council? Seeing none. Item number 10 is licenses. We have in front of us a license renewal for a Class 2 dealer's license for Alamari LLC Easy Auto Care located at 13 New Salem Street. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any discussion or questions? All right, seeing none, we'll take a roll call vote. Councillor Smith-Galvin?
Yes.
Councillor Vincent?
Yes.
Councillor Danahy?
Yes.
Councillor McLean?
Aye.
Councillor Butt?
Yes.
Councillor Dabrowski?
Aye.
And myself, yes. Motion carries 7-0. Item number 11, we have donations in the amount of $95 to the Council on Aging. Do we have a motion to accept?
Move to accept and expend.
Second?
Seconded.
Great. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote. Councillor Smith-Galvin?
Yes.
Councillor Vincent?
Yes.
Councillor Danahy?
Yes.
Councillor McLean?
Yes.
Councillor Butt?
Yes.
Councillor Dabrowski?
Aye.
And myself, yes. Motion carries 7-0. Item number 12, I will take a motion to approve the February 13th Town Council meeting minutes and the February 13th Town Council executive meeting minutes.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
The 13th or the 12th?
It's the 12th.
It's on the agenda. It says the 12th. I can't remember. I think it was the 12th.
Thank you. Sorry, it says the 13th on my agenda, but yes, no, that should be the 12th, and it is correct. Looks like it's correct in the minutes themselves.
Seconded.
All right. Any discussion? Thank you for that correction. Seeing none, are there any objections to approving both sets of minutes as drafted?
So moved.
Right, seeing none, motion minutes are approved. Item number 13, announcements. Do we have any announcements from the council tonight? Councilor McLean?
I would just say to anybody watching that WCAT has memberships, and they are suffering from funding issues at present. So anybody that has the wherewithal and wants to support WCAT, go to their website, go online, and consider making yourself a member of WCAT.
Great. Thank you. Other announcements from the council? Councilor Dabrowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have two. One, I wanted to remind everyone that the 4th of July parade is coming back again strong this year. They are getting, I think, a little bit of a late start, and so they're in the process now of fundraising. It's incredibly important that they be able to raise the funds in order to put on the extravagant parade that we've all come to know and love, and it's truly like one of the best, I'll argue the best in the country. Please check them out, see what you can do. Any amount of support helps them, and financial support is very important, but people power is really huge. So if you can volunteer in the planning process, but especially day of, we've all been in the parade, so we know the logistical challenges that creates, and they do a phenomenal job every year setting up the lakeside at the beginning and then getting us all through to the end. But please consider doing that. I think it's just super important. Another thing is I just wanted to give a shout out to two local businesses, Hart's Hardware and Sardello Signs. So anyone who's been in the square in the last few months has noticed that Hart's Hardware has been going through a transformation, restoring their facade, which I think is really encouraging. Well, I'll say the capstone of that improvement were two signs created by Sardello Signs that look absolutely fantastic on that building. And it just goes to show, how much talent we have within our own community. And it was a great synergy. I know Sardello Signs does a lot of signs around town, and they always do a great job. But it was a great synergy to see these two local businesses coming together to really improve the aesthetics, but also support each other. So keep those businesses and all of our businesses in mind, if you would, because it's really what drives the heart and soul of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Butt.
Just a couple of reminders. The Human Rights Commission will be having their annual Women's History Month event on Tuesday, March 7th, starting at 7 o'clock. The theme this year is Inspire Inclusion. It'll be at the high school with refreshments afterwards, so put that in your calendar. And then just want to remind everyone, the presidential primaries are March 5th. You can go and early vote or vote by mail. Call the town clerk's office if you have any questions.
Thank you. And just one thing on that, I do want to mention, there was a notice out from the town clerk's office today that if you did request a vote by mail ballot, but didn't check, if you were an unenrolled voter who didn't check off which party ballot you wanted, the clerk's office can't actually send you a ballot if they know which ballot you wanted. So if you fall into that bucket, requested a vote by mail ballot, are unenrolled, and perhaps didn't check off which party primary you wanted to vote in, please call the clerk's office to make sure that they can clarify that and get you a ballot to vote. Other announcements from other members of the council? Just a couple of things to add. The Boys and Girls Club is going to be celebrating the 10th anniversary of their Wakefield Club this Thursday. And I have to say, the Boys and Girls Club is such a critical part of the community that when I read that it had only been 10 years, and I had to think about the fact that, wow, it really has only been 10 years. They have such influence over the community and such influence over the many, many youth in Wakefield that they serve. It's hard to imagine that they've done so much in such a short period of time. So congratulations to them. I know they are having an open house on Thursday afternoon starting at 3:30 at the Wakefield Club. So please stop by for that. We are looking for submissions for the cover photo for our annual report. So one of the really special things that we do every year is be able to kind of recognize and really enjoy the work of one of our local photographers on our annual report. So submissions they are accepting submissions for that now. So if you are a photographer, and I know from our social media pages that there are many here in Wakefield who do some great work, please submit your work there. And then finally, I just wanted to mention something that Dennis Fazio, our forestry director, had shared with us on Thursday. Councilor Smith-Galvin and I had the chance to talk to him as a follow-up for our discussion around kind of our tree and vegetation policies last time. And one of the things he mentioned that did make me a little bit sad is that we are seeing in our public parks and facilities just an increasing amount of trash, waste, and also pet waste that's being left behind. And it's a shame because we're fortunate in this community to have so many great amenities for people to enjoy. But to the extent that those amenities aren't being cared for by our friends and neighbors, it really does take away our ability to do a lot of other maintenance work and a lot of other upkeep that we want to do if our team has to spend a lot of time picking up trash. So I put that out there just with a request and really a plea to make sure that everyone does kind of pick up after themselves. All of our parks and facilities are meant to be carry-in, carry-out facilities, meaning if you're producing trash, you really need to be responsible for picking it up and certainly picking up dog waste as well. So if folks can give our DPW a hand in doing that, I think the community will be better for it. So thank you for that. And I see Councilor Smith-Galvin, you've got your hand up.
Yes, just Quick couple of things. The track team actually won the D4 championship last week or the week before. I've lost track of time, so I just wanted to give a shout out to the boys track team for pretty overwhelming victory there. And just kind of an anecdote that I think is interesting. So tomorrow, the Department of Energy Resources is holding their Northeast Region meeting on the Green Communities program at our library, and I just think it says so much about Wakefield that that they, that they are coming and bringing in people from throughout the region to Wakefield. I think it's a reflection of all of the good work that we've done on environmental issues. So just wanted to share that anecdote.
Great. Thank you. Any other announcements? Oh, yes.
I just want to make like one comment. I know a few years ago, before COVID, we had talked about the idea of hybrid or having video participation. Remember, we talked about that in meetings. And tonight, you see Councilor Smith Galvin, and it's been like a seamless meeting with her there. And to think just a few years ago, it didn't even seem like this would be possible. How far we've come. I mean, I think it's really encouraging. We have Madam Clerk, who's always right there, helping us, making sure that things go smoothly. But it's been this meeting in particular. It's like Julie's here, And so I think that's really a testament to how far we've come, in terms of our integration of the hybrid model, which I hope we never lose.
And Councilor Smith Galvin,
Yeah,
I see your hand up.
I was just gonna add to that. I mean, Ed was traveling a couple of weeks ago as well. I think this is really important because it lets us do our jobs. We are all volunteers. I'm in Albany for a really important client and conference, and so I appreciate it. I appreciate that the state gave us the opportunity to do it and that we have the technology to do it. And I hope it encourages people, to run for office because you can balance your life and your volunteer public service.
And also our committees, our commissions, all of our volunteers across the board, because you can do this. You don't always have to be physically present to be able to be participating, make a difference. And I think that's a real selling point to a lot of our folks.
Yeah, and we've talked about accessibility in different ways tonight when we've talked about the bike and pedestrian plan, but one of the things I think we have to recognize is that, physically being in a meeting room for a meeting is sometimes difficult for individuals for a variety of reasons. And so, to the extent that this helps to make participation accessible, whether it's to members of committees or members to the public who want to attend, it is a good thing. So it's hard to think about a lot of good things coming out of the pandemic, but I think the flexibility in terms of how we're able to engage with the community is one of them. Great. Moving on to item number 14, matters not anticipated. I understand, Mr. Mayo, we have one item for tonight.
Sorry. The chair and maybe some other members of the town council received a letter from the Massachusetts State Lottery Commission that one of our local establishments, the Lakeside Tavern at 595 North Ave, has applied for a Keno license. Now, years and years ago, Keno licenses came to the town council for an actual vote for approval. Lottery took that away, or the state took that away some time ago. And if we do not object, then it just goes through. If we do object, we would need to notify the Massachusetts State Lottery Commission, and we would need to file an objection where there would be a hearing with the, petitioner would be there as well. This particular entity is refurbishing their restaurant bar area, and this is probably part and parcel of what's going on. So we have normally, this board has taken in the past, or this council, not to object to any of these, but I leave that for the council. I guess we would have to maybe put that on an agenda, or could we settle it now if there's nothing?
When did we get?
This came in over the weekend, 24th.
Yeah,
20, yeah.
We can deal with it now.
Yeah.
So are there questions or discussion from the council? Let me say it another way. Are there any objections that the council would want to raise? All right.
Sounds good.
Seeing none, I think we have our answer there. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, item number 15, adjournment. Our next town council meeting will be Monday, March 11th, 2024 at 7 p.m. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Seconded.
All right, any discussion? No, seeing none, any objection? I'm going to guess the answer is going to be no to that one. All right, seeing none, the meeting is hereby adjourned. Thank you very much for joining us this evening, and have a great evening, everyone.